continuing our series with the Voices of the Empire, and today we're going to be discussing our imperial ambitions. Now, before I get all started with this, just the usual setup issues. Just want to make sure that we're correctly positioned for this particular video before we carry on. I'll just maneuver it a bit more central maybe. I think that's not too bad. Not too bad. I don't like being too low in the video, you see. I'm going to tap this up in some more maybe. That's about right. I think that's about right there. Okay, brilliant. Now, it's a bit of a rush to get this one out, and I am having some strange technical issues with Reddit at the moment. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, because normally when I do these live streams, I'll share a link out to our accounts on our various social media platforms. So you have YouTube, Facebook, Discord, X, and Reddit. And for some reason or another, I cannot get access to Reddit, and I'm not sure why. I was on it literally earlier today, just to look at something, and I've I don't know. It keeps saying it's like an invalid password, invalid username, and I thought maybe like Reddit had banned the account or something. But when I actually click on Reddit and I have a look, I'm still there. I'm not logged in, but I'm still there. And if I click onto my account, it doesn't say it's been suspended or banned or anything like that. It's still there. So I'm not really sure what's happening with that. I might try a little later to get back on, but it has thrown me a little bit because I have had some issues with Reddit in the past, and yeah, it would be a shame if we lost the account. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I don't use Reddit for anything aside from promoting Stomaria on Stomaria's own subreddit. I don't contribute to anything else or anywhere else. I haven't done for years. So it wouldn't be the end of the world necessarily, but it's still our account, and so it would be gratifying to actually have access to that again. But anyway, that's all by the by. Just highlighting a few technical issues on my end. Right, so let's have a quick look to see who's in the chat before we carry on. Oh, New Esperance's here. Brilliant. Hello, Charlie. The SCR Gov is here. They say hello. Estuo, hello. Good to have you as always. Not sure what's that supposed to say. Transrestan, I think. Yo. The Benevolent Autocracy, good morning. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon here, but good morning to you, if that is indeed the time scales that you're working on. Gabon says, Stomaria after supper, I'm going to make my own calendar. Okay, good. Well, it's good to know that you're going to be proactive this afternoon. A dress in Empress Samantha jewelry is crazy. A dress in Empress Samantha jewelry is crazy. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but maybe you can offer some clarity on that one. As Stuart says, the haters in the last 2 videos are crazy. Well, it is what it is. I get haters every day of the week. What you see is normally just the tip of the iceberg. The amount of sort of private messages or emails we get. I mean, people say that I talk about the haters too much because, we might, put out a video once every, I don't know, 3 or 4 months highlighting some ridiculous micronation that's declared war on us, or some other weird drama or throwaway comment from someone. But the reality is, we vastly underplay it. If I was to discuss all of our haters and detractors, all of the comments, the messages, the emails, the lies, the memes that are made about Stomaria, whatever else, if I discussed all of this in any kind of detail, then we would literally be talking about nothing else for the entire time. So if anything, we are quite restrained when it comes to commenting on our haters and our detractors. But yes, the last 2 videos, there have been a couple there's been a small uptick in terms of the number of people commenting and sort of hating on the, oh, hang on. I seem, hang on, or is that just me? Oh no, sorry, that was me. You see, I have the live in front of me, so I can see the chat, but I accidentally paused it, so it looked like I'd frozen, so I was a bit worried I'd lost you. Anyway, yeah, so haters. Yeah, haters gonna hate, is what it is. We're still here, we're still growing, we're still developing, we're still making plans for the future, and as much as they might want to say it can't be done, or no one's going to take this seriously, or whatever else, we're here, we're doing it, and that's all there is to it. Benevolent Autocracy says it's 6 p.m. in France. Well, it's 5 p.m. or just gone here, so it is good afternoon or good evening to you. Don Bakes? I'm going to call you Dong. Happy 9th of Flandrensis. I hope Stomaria is doing well. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Hadrianus? Happy 9th of Hadrianus. Is that like a particular holiday or something to that effect? Not familiar with it, I'm afraid. But they say, I hope Stomaria is doing well. We most certainly haven't. Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. If you want to elaborate, please do. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that things aren't going too well. So it says, I'm excited after the last video. It should be such an important moment when Stomaria acquires next land. Yeah, and that's mainly why I wanted to have this live stream, because I did mention in the previous video that we did about territorial expansion that I would be looking to do more long-form videos and more lives in order to increase our popularity, increase our reach to new people and to previous supporters who might have sort of lost touch with us in some form or another. And obviously to generate revenue, because that's the name of the game at the moment. We want to build up as much capital as we can in order to acquire the next territory over the course of the next 18 months or so. And myself and King Daniel of Wayward have put in various plans in place and various targets in place that we wish to hit on the Stomarian and the Waywoodian front, respectively, with the potential opportunity for some kind of joint purchase agreement in 2028. So again, after about 18 months or so. But it's just as likely that we'll purchase our own territories, our own plots of land. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen on that front. But either way, before we even consider anything really, we need to build up necessary capital to get to that point. And so that's the name of the game. I am going to adjust this a little bit more because I'm still a little bit too high, I think. Low, sorry. Let's have a look. How's that? Is that any better? That's probably a little bit better. With that in mind, Dong says it's a 13-month calendar. Yeah, this is the thing with people messing around with calendars on like that. If people at large don't know what you're talking about, then I don't see much value in going down that route. It's the same when people try to create their own languages or their own alphabets and things like that. I mean, that's fine, I suppose, if you're trying to develop a cultural distinction between yourself and everyone else. But if that cultural distinction is so alienating to people that they literally have no idea what you're saying or what calendar you're referencing or whatever else, it just causes unnecessary friction where there should be growth, in my opinion. I mean, in Stomaria, we don't do anything unless there is a tangible reason to do so. We don't do anything unless it's going to be useful to us or it's going to advance our interests in a real way. But when it comes to languages and calendars and stuff, if you're going to use that in the public space and you're going to either insist upon it or communicating in that language or highlighting calendars or dates or something that other people just aren't going to know about, again, I just don't see any value in it. But you do you at the end of the day. Benevolent Autocracy says, who inspired you to create Stomaria? I keep saying Stormania in the past, and I apologize if I made you angry. You don't make me angry. People, I don't know why, because Stomaria to me is, I think it's quite an easy name to spell out, but I guess not, because I have had a lot of people in the past saying Stormaria or Stomania or Stomatia, and the various other iterations of Stomaria, which you know, I can't say I've ever been angry about it, but thank you for correcting yourself. I mean, but to be honest, I'm just going to put it out there. There's not much of an excuse if you're actually if you're subscribed to our channel and you can see the name Empire of Stomaria down there. You know, not much excuse, but all the same, I appreciate the apology, but not necessary, I assure you. So, funnily enough, you asked the question, who inspired you to create Stomaria? In the next, I'm going to say 2 or 3 days, the video is already made, I'm just deciding when to release it. We are going to be publishing a video which is not quite like anything that we've done before, at least not for a long time, in that the initial inspiration for Stomaria, as a lot of our citizens and supporters will know, is derived from an RTS game called Empire Earth back in the early 2000s. And this is back when I was, not sure I was even quite a teenager when I was playing. I was probably 11 or 12 years old, if I had a guess, 13 at absolute max. And me and my siblings would play this game, Empire Earth, and it would be a game where you would collect resources and build towns and cities, and you would develop technologies, and you would establish various industries, and you would, build up armies, conquer rivals, engage in diplomacy, and all that kind of thing. Very simple, rudimentary mechanics. Because obviously it's a game from the early 2000s, but I think it still holds up pretty well to this day. And this I say this is where the initial inspiration for Stomaria comes from, because ultimately this is the true origin story of Stomaria, if you like. Because even though nothing happened between Empire Earth and all the shenanigans that go associated with that. And then that led obviously to me, I say obviously, but obvious to those who know, led me and my siblings to go out into our back garden or to the local woods or whatever else, and we would build structures and we would collect resources and we'd invite our friends over and we'd have these battles and we'd have a system of taxation and we'd have an agrarian economy. And over time it became more and more sophisticated, where we had, just branches led against a tree as a sort of a very basic primitive shelter. And then by the end of it, after probably 3 or 4 years, I'd say, at its sort of peak, we went from that to like quite sophisticated fortifications, which some of our supporters and citizens might already be aware of, might have already seen photos of it in previous videos or on our website. I think it's on our website. And we went from, just having like these stick spears or whatever else that we've, broke off a tree, and we've, made a point or whatever else, and that was our spear, that was one of our weapons. And then by the end, we had this lathe that was purchased, and we were literally producing swords on this lathe. So we went it was quite interesting, especially looking back on it, because it was almost like the development of a genuine civilization, but in a very obviously minute micro way. And all those sorts of activities were quite important, because it helped really to develop my understanding from a very early age of history, of economics, of politics, and all that sort of thing. And it really sparked my interest in all of this. And not really much happened from that point on until I met my, at the time, fiance and now wife, Empress Samantha, when we were walking into town one day. And this is probably, I don't know, I'm going to say 15 years or more later, so after the end of our activities that we engaged in. We were walking into town and we were discussing our childhoods. And I explained to Samantha what me and my siblings used to do during our childhoods, and all these activities that we engaged in. And she made a single off-the-cuff remark saying, wouldn't it be great if we could do something like that? Or would it be cool if we could do something like that now? And that was the spark for Stomaria, because it got into my head, well, why can't I do it now? I'm, a grown man. I now have the resources, the time, the capacity, the knowledge, to some extent at least, to actually do this. So why can't we do it? And from there, I really got the ball rolling. And that was in 2018. And there was probably, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 18 months, give or take, of consideration. Probably 18 months is probably too long a stretch. I'd say probably 6 to 12 months of me kind of putting the pieces together for how Stomaria would look. What kind of nation, what kind of community would I be building? What kind of values would we aspire to achieve? What are our actual objectives? How are we going to approach this? And then we officially launched, obviously, in June 2019, and the rest is history. But all of this to say is that I've made a video which compiles the first three missions of Empire Earth, and I'm going to release this, and the video is probably about 2.5 hours long, so it's quite a chunky video, but it's going to hopefully give more people an idea of how I view the nation building process, how I view civilization in terms of its creation, its development, in terms of human history, about why this is all so interesting to me, and what kind of sort of logic that I sort of run through when I build Stomaria up, and when I consider ancient civilizations and all of the activities that are associated with developing those civilizations. That is reflected on some level within this RTS game. And so it's no small thing to say that Empire Earth is the initial catalyst for the foundation, or the eventual foundation of Stomaria, even though that the RTS game and the foundation of Stomaria were, nearly 20 years apart. And something that a lot of people don't seem to know, I mean, a lot of people watching this might, but the name Stomaria is actually derived from one of the phrases that the citizens of Empire Earth during the early epochs of the game, so Stone Copper Ages, would say when given a command. So they would, you give them citizens a command, and they would respond occasionally by saying Stoma. And in this video that I put together, you can see that quite clearly. Like when you give the citizens a command, some of them will say Stoma. And that is where the name Stomaria comes from, because that is ultimately what inspired the foundation of Stomaria so many years later. So anyway, yeah, so that video is going to come out in a couple of days. Probably, I want to say Monday evening. It might be another day. It depends. I do try to kind of space out our videos for a couple of days to let the other ones catch up, so people don't get so fall behind in terms of our content. And because I'm doing the live stream now, I'll probably wait a couple of days before I release that. So that one's that. Dong says, long story short, our coffers have run dry. I guess it's a skill issue on our part. Well, funnily enough, I actually put together a video. You might have seen it. When was it? Earlier this week, I think. How to buy land. And even though that the title is How to Buy Land, it is effectively just a video about how to generate capital, how to save more money, and how to generate more revenue for yourself, and which can be used to purchase land. So it's probably one of our longer videos, and you can probably tell in the video, but I was not very happy when I was making that video. It was quite late when I started making it, and I was not in a very good mood. I can't really remember the reason why, but I don't come across as jovial, maybe, as I normally do. But that said, it's a 25-minute video, give or take, so you might find some value in it if you are struggling to raise revenue, or raise capital for your nation, for your project, for your community. Maybe it'll offer some insights or give you some value. If not, I'm sure you'll find your own way. But just from my perspective, these are some of the things that have helped me, either now or in the past, to generate capital. Dong says, it's a silly thing, mostly for fun. Nobody uses it anyway. I guess that's referencing the calendar. KCP says, honestly, a 13-month calendar is more sensible. Regardless of whether it's more sensible or not, if people don't understand it, it's pointless. If 99.9% of the population around you have no idea what you're talking about when you're referencing certain calendars or certain dates or timelines or whatever else, it's just not worth bashing your head against a brick wall for it. Okiadia is far harder. I very much agree. It's yeah, that's why I generally call you the benevolent autocracy, because that's easier to say than Okiadia. Only because I honestly, until you just said that, I wasn't sure how to pronounce it. So and I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it right now. Maybe I'm not. Okiodia. Or is it Okiodia? Is it Okiodia or Okiodia? Again, when it comes to Stomaria, people sometimes, I say a lot sometimes, I think I'm one of the few people that actually says Stomaria. Most people say Stomaria, which, funnily enough, is probably the better way to say it, since the origin of the name, where it's derived from, is Stomar. So Stomaria makes more sense than Stomaria. I'm going to get myself muddled now. Stomaria, Stomaria, Stomar. It's somewhere in there. But I know what you're talking about, so that's absolutely fine. If you say Stomaria, Stomaria, doesn't matter. Stomatia, Stomanea, Stormaria, or whatever else, those, however, are unacceptable names for Stomaria. Because it's not a pronunciation issue, that's a spelling issue. Estua says, I know it will depend on how much revenue you manage to generate, but what type of land would you look to acquire? A very good question. So, again, one of the things I wanted to discuss today was the kind of lands that we would be looking to acquire. Because, as the title of the video would suggest, our imperial ambitions is about acquiring additional territory through legal and legitimate means. It's about raising the necessary capital in order to really push forward in terms of accomplishing our goals. And in terms of the actual land that we are looking for, I've said this before, but we really can't be too picky. If we have land ahead of us, in front of us, once we have the capital, it's not a case of where we can sit down and we can just pick whichever land we want. We have to choose land which is up for sale at the time that we're ready to purchase it and which meets certain criteria. We have to be able to access it, and it has to be something that we can utilize, and it's got to be affordable without any horrendous, legal caveats in place when it comes to what you can use the land for, or if there's any protections on the land or any restrictions on the land. So these are all things that we've got to consider. And so when it comes to the type of land, it very much depends, because we could work with another woodland, but I suppose in an ideal scenario, what we would go for is something which was either a bit more mixed, so it had a bit of open space with maybe a little bit of woodland, maybe a stream running by it, whatever else. But we're not delusional enough, I suppose, to assume that we're going to be able to get something so perfect for us. So I think the reality is, because we've already got a woodland, we would principally look for something more open. A few trees here and there are fine, but something more open so that we can start to experiment, especially with the a mixture of agricultural produce, especially ones that require full sun or at least not, complete or partial shade as we've had in the woodland. Because, as I say, we're quite limited in the woodland as to what we can grow and what we can do. For those that know the woodland and have been in the woodland, and those who have seen our videos and all the rest of it, they'll appreciate it is quite a beautiful part of the world. We have transformed it into something that is aesthetically pleasing and productive. Despite the massive obstacles in our path, we have managed to grow a vast range of produce in the land. We have managed to grow quite a sizable amount of like rhubarb, various berries, and various herbs and all the rest of it, as well as using the land for the livestock that we have there, the chickens that we have there. We even use it for generating solar power, and that's extremely challenging in the woods, I think it's fair to say. But the internet that's there, it runs off the solar power that we've generated. The small hand tools, all the battery powered stuff, that's all generated through the solar power that we have there. There's no mains or anything there, so all the power that's generated there, all the electricity that we have there, is done exclusively through our solar power grid that we have. So despite the fact that it's in the woods, we've done quite well to get as far as we have on that front. But in that similar vein, if we had an open space, solar power would be far less of an issue when it comes to generating as much as possible. So yeah, I think open space is the way to go. And whether or not that's like grassland or actual agricultural lands, again, remains to be seen, but just something a bit more open. The Raven says, hey, how are you? We're very good, thank you. Gabon says, it's 14-month calendar. We're talking about 13 and 14-month calendars. Okay, that's fine. Estua says, oh no, sorry, you've already covered that. Oh, sorry, I must have missed you earlier. User, I'm not going to do it, it's just user. User, hello Emperor, I am Hataria. We have spoken in the past. I'm sure we have, but you'll have to forgive me. I get messages, emails, DMs and whatever else. I get 24 a week. If you're not in the solid inner circle, if you like, if you're not a friend of the Empire or a member state of the Empire, or if I know you and have known you for a long period of time, the odds are I'm probably not going to remember you. The name Hataria does ring a bell, but you'll have to forgive me. I'm not sure what the conversations we've had in the past would consist of. The Raven. Where did you get that blue greatcoat that you wear sometimes? Oh, the blue uniform. That's the uniform with the cap. That was actually custom made back in, when was it? I suppose it was the tail end of 2024, maybe going into 2025, but I'm sure it was 2024. That's when we got it custom made by a company called, I want to say it's the Jacket Shop, which is a UK-based company. I imagine they're still going, if I've got that right. I'm pretty sure I've got that right. But I think they do like historical costumes, but they also do just like custom-made stuff. Wouldn't recommend it, frankly, if you're trying to do something a lot more meaningful with your nation building project, only because it is extortionately expensive. And we have contemplated sort of reverting back to the more conventional military grade uniforms that we had for the Imperial Guard back in the day, which was the sort of woodland camo one. Obviously, it had some Stomarian insignia on it and all the rest of it, because it was to kit someone out fully in that is a fraction of the price. I won't go into the specifics, but yeah, you could quite easily do, I'd say, 5, maybe 6 people in the woodland camouflage battle dress uniforms, as opposed to the uniform that I can be seen in. So I would recommend something a bit more cheaper and more practical if you're going to go down that route. So that's just my 2 cents on that one. Jan says, hello there. I'm the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Betelgeuse. Why do you guys always come up with such complicated names? Or at least they're complicated for me. I need simple sounding names. I made a series of videos about the names of nation building projects and micronations, all the rest of it. And you guys obviously have not watched them. Either that or I'm just hopeless at pronunciation. But welcome to the live stream, all the same. Gooberian Department of Mass Media says, we love the glorious leader, as well you should. User CB says, I did email you about being an ally of Stomaria, but my nation fizzled. I'd like to become a citizen. I have donated in the past, was wondering what it takes to become a citizen of the Empire. Very simple. In fact, it's in the chat now. It's a pinned comment. You just have to join through our Patreon campaign. I appreciate that it's not going to be for everyone because there is going to be a regular financial contribution involved. That minimum contribution is £1 a month. And I appreciate the fact that maybe it will be too much money still for a lot of people, which is fine. We appreciate your support all the same. Simply watching our content, engaging with us in some way is just as much appreciated. But to become a citizen of Stomaria and then to go on to get involved in Stomaria in a more formal capacity as a citizen is going to require you to go through our Patreon campaign. We have gone through various iterations of how to become a citizen in the past, but it just becomes so complicated and convoluted and ultimately unnecessary when we can just say, if you're on the Patreon campaign and we can see you're on the Patreon campaign, we know you're supporting Stomaria financially, you're giving a tangible benefit to Stomaria, so you're in. And it's as simple as that. Sabe says, hi guys, hello, welcome. Dong says, funny enough, we used to be a proper statelet. I'm not sure what a statelet is. We used to be a proper statelet in the past, but things have gone not necessarily in our favour. Savrilia? Sabrilia will not be returning as far as I'm concerned, but it's a nostalgia thing. So I'm guessing Sabrilia was your project, your Micronation or whatever else. Yeah, I mean, if it's dead and buried, it's dead and buried, and you'll have the memories of it. I mean, Stomaria has been going for, where are we now? Over 7 years at this point. And I have no intention of slowing down. This is something I intend to pass on to my daughter when the time comes, and it'll be, as I've said many times, it'll be a nation building project that's generational. It's something that's genuine and generational, and something that's going to have a real impact on the lives of those involved. That is my aspiration. I wouldn't be investing nearly as much time and energy and resources into the development of Stomaria if I didn't think it was going to last, and if I didn't think there was going to be some long-term tangible benefit to my family and those that are getting involved. If nothing else, it is, I think, quite a useful educational tool for a lot of people, even those that aren't affiliated with Stomaria in a formal capacity. I have got no end of messages and emails and all the rest of it saying that, we have been inspired by your videos, or you're an inspiration to us, and because of you we've decided to make what we're doing public and all the rest of it. And that's always very gratifying to hear, because a lot of people will go out there and they'll always point to the endless stream of detractors and haters that we have, which is of course true. But equally, we have vast numbers of people that support us, that get behind us, that have drawn inspiration from us. And you don't have to take my word for it. You don't build up a YouTube channel with nearly 6,000 people at this point, and have people in every corner of the internet when it comes to micronational affairs discussing Stomaria on some level or another, if we weren't well known, if we didn't have a support base, if we weren't noteworthy. And as I say, the stats speak for themselves. We can pull an audience, for lack of a better term. Not so much in the live streams, I find. We normally get maybe half a dozen at best during the live streams at any one time. This is a sort of peak concurrent thing. And I don't know if that's something specific to Stomaria's channel, but when it comes to our sort of long form videos, it can be hit or miss, but generally speaking, 2, 3, 4, 500 views for a video is pretty standard, and for a channel of our size, I think it's about right. But all that aside, yeah, we have our fair share of haters, but we have our fair share of supporters as well. If that was even the question, I don't even remember if that was the question. No, it had nothing to do with it. This is the thing. I will read a comment and I'll go off on a tangent. I won't even remember what the original commenter was wrong. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm a bit like that. Right. Jan says, true story. During an Eternian live stream, I got blocked from the comments for making a joke about ending Eternian imperialism. I mean, I'm not overly surprised. I don't think I've ever had to ban anyone from a live stream before, despite the fact that we have had a few people commenting in it which weren't exactly in favour of Stomaria, shall we say. But it doesn't surprise me. AP of Eternia is someone that strikes me as very thin-skinned. I have had people in the past, in fact there are some that joined Stomaria in the past that came from Eternia. And one of the reasons that they ended up leaving Eternia was not only because, as a lot of people know, Emperor AP of Eternia draws a lot of influence and inspiration, by his own admission, from communist ideology. His entire doctrine, his philosophy, just seems to be rooted in communist philosophy. And a lot of people could see that, and obviously rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, especially from people in the States, because, I think it's probably in the uptick a little bit more in recent times, but typically speaking, communism is not your go-to kind of ideology in the States, or much else anywhere in the world, really, especially the Western world, especially in places where it's been tried. But all that aside, aside from the drift to communism and communist ideals from Chairman AP, it was more of the fact that every mention of Stomaria in any capacity, in AP's presence, in his like Discord server or his live streams or his whatever, that will get you kicked out of Eternia. That will get you ostracized entirely from Eternia. So again, I think I've made a video about this before, at least I've mentioned it in a video before, but we have had people who have told me in the public space, I think it was a comment on our YouTube channel at one point, where he said that if you watched, he told some of the people who were watching AP's content that if they even watched Stomaria's content, then they should just withdraw their support from Eternia entirely, because he could not tolerate the fact that there would be people in Eternia or following Eternia or finding Eternia to be interesting that might also find Stomaria to be interesting or Stomaria to be something worth supporting. And that to me is just baffling. The idea, I mean, I couldn't even begin the thought process that I would have to go through to demand that the citizens and supporters of Stomaria should absolutely 100% never, ever, ever watch the content of this person or that person or this person or whatever else. And if they did, then I would kick them out of Stomaria. It just seems, it's baffling to me, and I'll never get my head around it. But AP certainly has an axe to grind with Stomaria, despite, you know, there's obviously a history there where, should I delve into that for those that don't know? I might do briefly. So we're going off on another tangent, so I will catch up with you guys, I promise. But for those that don't know, Eternia is a micronation that we were actually looking to build formal relations with back in, when was it? I'm going to say 2021. So it was the tail end of 2021. And we agreed to establish a trade agreement. So we agreed that I would send some goods to Eternia and Eternia would send some goods to us. Now, within about a week or so of making this agreement, I sent the goods to AP of Eternia and he received the goods within a week or two. So we were quite quick with the turnaround. AP kept delaying the sending of his goods to us. So the trade agreement was not complete. And so we went from our side of the bargain being completed in December 2021. And then it got to January, and then it got to February, and then it got to March, and then it got to April. And throughout this entire period, none of the goods that AP had promised us was materializing. And I was in, relatively constant communication with AP. And he just constantly, made excuses or said it was coming soon or the final touches were just being made, and then another month would go by and it still would not be sent, and so on and so forth. And during this time, you would sort of often cite a lack of time to be able to send this package to us, while at the same time he was doing I think it was 30 or 40 hours of live streams during this period, but he didn't have time to send the package to us. And this was getting more and more frustrating. And it wasn't a topic of conversation, like a main topic of conversation within the Empire of Stomaria. But when we had an Imperial Court meeting, I did make mention of the fact that we were looking to build closer ties with Eternia. The trade agreement had not been completed yet, and I did explain that. There were some issues as well with regards to the way that AP and Eternia were presented. They were quite meme-like, they were quite joke-like. Certainly a lot of their earlier content, and though they had, as far as we were aware, had progressed a lot since then, they were they did things a lot more tongue-in-cheek than we tend to do, and that did raise some alarm bells and amongst the members of the Imperial Court. But it was actually Queen Neve of Selassie, ironically enough, that's made a real point about this. And the other members of the Imperial Court also did, in that they told me flat out that it was not acceptable that this trade agreement in particular was taking as long as it did, and they needed it resolved. They wanted it resolved in order to, before we even considered pursuing closer relations with the AP of Eternia. And I was the sole person in that meeting, in the Imperial Court meeting, and that's to say the Imperial Court meeting is where all the representatives of the Empire get together and they discuss various aspects of the Empire in terms of what progress has been made, what plans for the future, and all the rest of it. And I was the sole member of the Imperial Court defending AP, saying, "Oh, he's got this going on, he's got that going on. It'll happen." But the rest of the members of the Imperial Court said, "You've got to do something about this. Convey the message," and all the rest of it. And so, okay, fine, I'll let him know, and we'll move on from there. And so I messaged AP, and I said repeatedly that this wasn't an attack on Eternia, this wasn't an attack on you, but we had outlined a few issues with Eternia that we'd like resolved before we sort of pursued close relations. And one of them was just wanting to make sure that you were, genuine, you're serious about this. A lot of your content was, quite meme-like, quite, tongue-in-cheek or whatever else. We just want to make sure we're getting into formal relations with someone that's actually sharing our vision for the future. And then obviously we mentioned the trade agreement, making sure that it was going to be completed in good time. And I said again, this is not to attack on you, not to attack on Eternia. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we can get all these issues resolved and ironed out. And we'll have a meeting with you to discuss our future and all the rest of it. I didn't really think anything much more of it. I just hoped that it was just going to be resolved and that would be it. But he sent a message back saying that he was, I can't remember the exact word he used. It was like he was offended by the very suggestion that Eternia would have to justify itself in any way to Stomaria. And he sort of went on in this message, and he just finished it off without once mentioning the completion of this trade agreement by saying, "We wish you all the best for the future." So he just kind of like completely pulled the rug from underneath us, completely, as far as I'm concerned, out of the blue. We had given them a lot of grace, we had given them a lot of time to sort of fulfill these obligations, and when we sort of decided to approach AP in a more formal capacity, say, can we have a meeting, can we just resolve some of these issues? His response was to throw his toys out of the pram and say, well, I'm not going to play with you anymore. But at the same time, he still had our goods, and he had no intention of returning them to us or sending his own goods. And I did say, don't bother us sending your own goods to us, because obviously this partnership that we were looking to establish is not going to work out. You've made that abundantly clear. So just send our own goods. You don't have to prepare a package or anything. Just literally put our stuff in a box and send it to us. You don't need to make any special ingots. You don't have to make any special merchandise or order anything, or just send our own goods back. And he flatly refused. And I tried for weeks to resolve this privately, to just try to get all this stuff back to us, because I feel like I've just been conned at that point. He received Stomarian flags, he received badges, an embroidered patch, Stomarian silver, and he received these goods, and then he sent nothing back, and he didn't return our own goods back. And so that's what prompted the condemnation of Eternia video that was published I think it was sometime in April 2022. So I think it's something like Stomaria's condemnation of Eternia or something. If you go back, you can see it, and you can see it in more detail. This remained unresolved for months and months and months, because he just refused to send our own goods back, and we just kind of wrote it off in the end, because we realized that AP was not someone we could do business with. He was not someone that was going to return our goods under his own power or whatever else. So it was what it was. And it wasn't until 2023. So keep in mind, we initiated and completed our side of the trade agreement back in 2021, December 2021. And AP did end up returning our goods to us in, I think it was January or February 2023. And that's only because a former Eternian citizen who left Eternia, but left AP some money as a parting gift, and then he joined Stomaria, and that Stomarian is incidentally Lord Christensen of Stomaria. He's been a loyal and dedicated Stomarian citizen since joining back in the tail end of 2022. But he left Eternia because he was fed up with AP's shenanigans. Just as a side story for that, because at the time, Lord Christensen, or David as he was commonly known then, or David the Blacksmith in Eternian circles, he actually created the copper ingots that we were looking to trade with Eternia. And so after everything fell through with AP, we decided just to go straight to David and say, would you be interested in sending us copper ingots, and we'll send you some silver. But as soon as AP caught wind of the fact that we were sort of going over his head and we were engaging directly with David, he demanded that that David break the trade agreement with us, just in the same way that he did with us. And given the alternative, given the option of doing that or simply walking away from Eternia, David said, okay, well, I'm going to leave Eternia then, if you're going to tell me I can't do this, something I've already agreed to prior. And that's something I like about David. That is a man of honor. He's a man of his word, and he's incredibly loyal to a fault. And he was incredibly loyal to AP. In fact, David was the single largest financial backer of Eternia up until he left. And he's actually now the single largest backer of Stomaria outside of the imperial family. And AP threw that away because he couldn't stomach the idea that someone else would be engaging in some sort of trade or commerce with Stomaria. And he tried to sabotage that agreement as well, and he ended up just losing more than I suspect he ever planned to. And so, as a parting gift, David actually sent AP some money, and AP used that money to send our own goods back. And then he made some very cringy video saying how they had honoured the trade agreement with Stomaria and that they were so sorry that it had taken so long and all the rest of it. Not an apology to us at all, but an apology to those who perceived AP and Eternia to be a completely hopeless trade partner. Yeah, that's the kind of bad blood between Stomaria and Eternia, in that they broke a trade agreement with us. They would have kept, to this day, I have no doubt, all of the merchandise and silver and all the rest of it that we sent them, had it not been for the fact that AP was simply given the funds by David, who was an Eternian, now Stomarian, in order to return to us. And, he made it out like we were the bad guys, like we were in the wrong, that somehow it was us that had, been the unreasonable ones. But anyway, that in a nutshell is the history between Eternia and Stomaria. And since then, there's been a steady stream of former Eternian citizens and supporters that have gone on to become Stomarian citizens. I can almost guarantee that there has been absolutely zero transition the other way, in the sense that Stomarian citizens have joined Eternia. But anyway, that's all by the way. I went on a massive tangent. We're going to catch up with some of the comments now, but that is the history between Stomaria and Eternia in a nutshell. Right, so where did we get to? Making a joke about Eternian imperialism. Yep, okay. Right. And Jan says the Micronation is pronounced like Beetlejuice. It's named after a star, not the movie. Okay. Is there a star called Beetlejuice? I'm not familiar. Thin says insane live pull. I don't disagree. Oh gosh, hang on. This is the problem when I leave it too long. It starts to jump. Right. The Raven says a state that is a very small independent country or political unit that acts as a small nation, especially when formed when a larger country breaks apart. Okay, I kind of get the idea of the concept of what a statelet is. I guess my confusion, I suppose, is that in the sense that they had a statelet, because I'm pretty sure that's what they said, is that their project was a statelet rather than a nation building project or a micronation or whatever else. So I was just curious as to whether or not it was more, for lack of a better term, legitimate, or if it was just, much like the rest of us, if you like. Right. Dong says, at least we had fun these 10 years when we were around. That's what counts. Yeah, I mean, a lot of projects fizzle out within a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe a year or two. But 10 years is certainly a decent milestone. The Free German Republic of the XJ, I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but I recognize you, Smerit. That's fantastic, thank you. Austin says, what's up, King? Not much at all. We are just discussing our imperial ambitions for the future and what that's going to entail. Don says, what's even funnier is that we had a Wikipedia page before we got taken down for not making news and thus no sources. Yeah, I mean, anyone and everyone can create a Wikipedia page, I suppose. But if they're not well sourced, as you say, it will be taken down. Austin says, where else is this being streamed on? Nowhere. We are YouTube live streaming only, for the moment at least, and certainly for today. So it is just here. Jen says, also my public name is exactly like IPA. Sounds like, I'm not even going to try that. in US pronunciation guide. Yeah, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that, I'm afraid. Kaizen. Kaizen says, looks at LARP. Not sure what you're referring to necessarily. You're talking about Stomaria. I mean, you can define it as live action roleplay if you like. Doesn't make much difference to us, but, you know, to each their own. Lol says, is this a joke? Were you promised the world 3,000 years ago? No, I don't think I was promised the world 3,000 years ago, but, you know. I'm not sure you want me to say that. I mean, it seems pretty random. But, no, I mean, it's not a joke in the sense that, you know, Stomaria exists. It's a real place. It consists of real people. We have real ambitions. We've made real progress. You know, when it comes to growing our own food, producing our own energy, you know, establishing a forestry industry, raising livestock, creating our own sense of cultural identity, acquiring lands, producing our own money through the production of pure silver bars and coins. You know, it's all real. It's all happening. It's all a thing. But yeah, I'm not sure what the 3,000 years ago is. Comment. Not sure where that comes from. Charlie, or New Esperance, but Charlie as I know. Dear Emperor, I'm pleased to announce that by the end of the summer, New Esperance will have finalized preparations for its marathon drive towards the project's global expansion, so that the Empire might extend through it in the future. Okay, so you're gonna, oh right, so towards the end of the summer, you're going to finalize preparations for. Okay, so you're going to get your ducks in a row, and then you're going to push forward with presumably the acquisition of additional territory at some point. But that would be fantastic. For those that don't know, New Esperance, who is in the channel, is governed by King Charlie. And King Charlie and New Esperance, well, New Esperance in particular is a member state of the Empire, and King Charlie is a member of the Imperial Court and a part of the Empire. He's a part of the Sumerian community, a part of the family that we are building, this family of nations, with the other one being the Kingdom of Wayward under King Daniel. Now, we did have the Republic of Vesta under Consul David, but Consul David decided to dissolve, well, I say dissolve, to merge Consul Vesta, to merge the Republic of Vesta into Stomaria proper, so he could fulfill his role as a Lord of Stomaria in a more full-time capacity, because as far as he was concerned, there was just such close alignment between Stomaria and Vesta anyway, he may as well just work on one project, and how the Republic of Vesta was eventually absorbed into Stomaria proper. So we still only have 2 member states. But in the past, we have had others. We had the Princedom of Moreland, we had the Kingdom of Norwick, we had the Kingdom of Seleucia, we had the Duchy of Braunau, and was that it? I'm pretty sure that must have been it. But those 4 that I just mentioned, so Norwick, Seleucia, Moreland, and Braunau, they don't exist. They folded, and so we've maintained our grip on what's left of this crumbling empire of ours. But in terms of the total member states, we kind of peaked in 2022. I'm going to say like November 20. It must have been November 2022 when we had the Kingdom of Norwick, the Kingdom of Seleucia, the Princedom of Moreland, the Kingdom of Wayward, and then the Duchy of Braunau. So we had 5 member states of the empire, and then Stomaria itself, obviously. And then in quick succession, we had Seleucia and Braunau were gone in December 2022, and then Moreland and Norwick were gone in, I want to say March or April, maybe, the following year in 2023. And so we were just left with, did I mention Vesta? How many member states did we have? Maybe it was more. Anyway, all by the by. Yeah, we when other communities, other nations decide to get involved in Stomaria, they want to become a part of our community, they want to be along for the ride, they can apply to become member states, and from there they can get involved in a more formal capacity in terms of helping to, in some way guide the direction of the empire. They form part of the Imperial Court, where we have meetings, we discuss, plans for the future and progress has been made. Where we can, we support each of the member states in some capacity or another. I mean, over the years, the Kingdom of Wayward, which is our first ever member state, and this was going back in 2021. They remained a member state for nearly 5 years now. And because of that longevity, there is a lot of trust, a lot of cooperation, and a huge amount of financial resources and time and energy have been sort of flowing back and forth between Wayward and Stomaria. From the purchase of Southwood, so Southwood was actually a Waywoodian territory, because Wayward at the time consisted of 2 plots of land, and they sold one of them to us, which went, and that's why, for those that watch our videos, you have Southwood and Wayward South, because they were both originally Waywoodian, but Wayward sold one of them to us so we could develop it. So we've had, and for the record, that was through a legal process, so it is legally ours. It's not just a case of, hand over some cash and, a gentleman's agreement or whatever else. This is legally our own land. But that all by the by, member states become involved in Stomaria to advance their own interests, as well as advancing the interests of the collective whole to some degree or another. So it is a family of nations that we are trying to build, and that's what the Empire is all about. It's about trade, about commerce, about enterprise, about tangible mutual cooperation between different entities, which may have different identities or traditions or customs or cultures to some degree or another, but ultimately we have the same ambition, the same values, the same ideals, to the point that we can be brought together to actually build something real, something tangible. And these communities that we're developing, in large part independent of one another, are nevertheless brought together under the umbrella of the Empire. And the best way to describe it, I suppose, is many nations but within one state. As a, because that's ultimately what we are. We are a federal empire. We are a federal monarchy. And again, don't remember what the question was, but that's where we're at. Where are we? Oh, no, Esperance was talking about that. Yeah, fantastic. Well, anyway, Charlie, I look forward to seeing how things progress. Do keep me updated on that one. I have had a lot going on, and will have a lot going on over the coming months. So forgive me if I don't, always keep up to date with what you're doing. But if there's anything that you are doing that you want me to make me aware of, feel free to put it in the Imperial Court chat or send me a message directly. Always happy to hear what's going on. Austin says, what's the exchange rate of Stomaria's currency to USD? Well, that's a good question, and the simple answer to that is that it varies, because Stomaria's money, as opposed to a currency, Stomaria's money is it consists of silver, pure 999 fine silver, and the spot price of silver is the value of the money. So when it comes to how it trades with the USD or the pound sterling or the euro, the yen, or whatever else, that will depend on what the market price is of silver. So if the value of 999 fine silver in USD terms is, I don't know, say $2 or $2.50, then it will be $2.50 for 1 gram of our silver. And each gram of silver is a stater. So originally we had our first money consisted of 5-gram coins. And these 5-gram coins comprised of 999 fine silver. And these were 5 stater coins. So 5 staters, sorry, I think I heard someone at the door. Just give me 30 seconds. I will come back to explain. Right. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So what was I saying? So yeah, so the 5-gram coin that we have is made of pure silver, and each gram is 1 stater. So 5-gram coin is a 5 stater coin, and we've since transitioned to stater bars. So we have 50 grams of silver in these bars, And so they are 50 stater bars. And each of these staters is, as I say, 1 gram of 999 fine silver. So the exchange rate, I suppose, depends on whatever 1 gram of 999 fine silver is the spot price of 999 fine silver at any given day. So it is whatever it is today. Yes, very good question. I'm sorry, a bit of a convoluted way of me explaining it. I have made videos about it past, it probably explains it a bit clearer than I've done here. Meek the Vamp says, I made it, I'm here, great to hear. The Raven says, when it comes to land, how many acres, hectares are you after? Well, this is the thing. In an ideal situation, we would have, 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 acres of land or whatever else. But the reality is, we are a relatively small community, a relatively poor community in the great scheme of things, and when over 95% of the funding comes directly out of the imperial family's own pocket, we are, at the end of the day, just a single family unit, and we have other things to consider. We have, mortgages to pay, cars to pay, various appliances that break down, or whatever else, MOT, life insurance, health insurance, food, activities, whatever else. I've got to take all of this sort of thing in consideration, as well as the development of Stomaria. We are, in a lot of ways, more handicapped than most people, because I have to think of not only advancing the interests of my own family and making sure that our standard of living is maintained and enhanced over time, but also at the same time making sure that Stomaria keeps on pushing forward. And this has become incredibly, not conflicting as such, but at times I'm having to take the gas off one to make sure that the other one is prioritized or pushed forward in some way. And I was hoping by this point in our development that more of the community at large, so Sumerian citizens and supporters, would be able to take more of a responsibility in terms of helping to fund Stomaria. And that's in part why we went back to the Patreon campaign as a way to identify citizens, because ultimately those that want to become a part of Stomaria, want to associate with Stomaria, presumably want to see us succeed and they want to contribute in some way. And if they're able to do that, then they can do so through our Patreon campaign. Because the idea is that the more revenue that we can generate through Patreon, the sale of our merchandise, through ad revenue, through our YouTube channel, through our live streams, through like super chats and gifts and things like that, which we had in the past, all of the funds that can be dedicated to Stomaria through those means is revenue, is a source of income that I don't need to worry about trying to find myself. Because ultimately, even though a lot of what I do does benefit myself and my family in particular, a lot of what we spend our resources on just does not have that advantage. Like, I suppose a classic example, if we didn't buy Southwood, if we didn't spend, how many thousands and thousands of pounds in buying it, developing it, and turning it into what it is today, I could have taken that money and I could have invested it into my pension. I could have used it to pay down my mortgage. I could have used it to buy various stocks and shares, which would have increased in value far more exponentially than the land price as things stand. I don't think we would have lost money necessarily on what we spent on the land because it is quite an attractive piece of land. But ultimately, it is land that's about 60 miles away from us. It's not something that we can access incredibly easily. It's something that's, I might visit, depending on what's going on, I might visit once every couple of weeks, maybe once a month, to develop it, maintain it, and to keep people updated about it. But ultimately, we could have used those resources elsewhere. And so what I want to do is I want to make Stomaria far more community orientated, where the community at large is helping to support the project rather than just relying exclusively on us as a single family unit. And again, I don't think that's much to ask, because again, there's only so much I can do. There's only so much that we can do. We need to have more people involved. And fortunately, we do. We are increasing the number of people that are getting involved within Stomaria, within the Empire, and those people are, like us, putting aside financial resources, financial capital that is going to help to push things to the next level. Obviously, the more we can do that, the greater the number of people, the greater the amount of capital that we can generate, the more land we will acquire. But realistically, when it comes to the next land purchase, it's going to be, you know, potentially as small as 2, 3, 400 square meter plot of land. Maybe could push to a 1,000 square meters. So maybe like, I don't know, a little over a quarter of an acre, third of an acre, that kind of range. Much will depend on where we buy it. If we buy it in the southeast England, prices are a lot higher than there are elsewhere. But even elsewhere, it comes with its own challenges. If I buy somewhere in the outskirts of some distant village in the north of England, 150, 200 miles away, or whatever else, how useful is that to me in terms of getting to it, in terms of accessing it, in terms of utilizing it? Unless there's someone there, a steadfast Stomarian, that's going to be able to make use of it themselves and generate a return of some kind on this investment by utilizing that land, then there's no point. So it would have to be closer to where we reside, and that is the southeast of England. So it's a bit of a conundrum, but without having the capital to start with, without having the capital to work with from the get-go, it's kind of almost a moot point, because I think I mentioned earlier in this video, we will buy the land that that is available at the time. So once we have if I look at land now and go, that's the plot I want, it's not going to be there in 18 months' time. So there's not much point in trying to do my due diligence and trying to find plots of land now, because until we're in a position to actually pull the trigger, at that point, we start looking at land. Otherwise, before then, it's almost a complete waste of time, because you're only going to get disappointed spending hours or days researching all these different plots of land and then not being in a position to actually do anything about it, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and you've wasted time for no good reason. But yeah, the more land we get, the better. Mika the Vamp says the 3,000 years ago joke was an Israel joke trying to portray you as Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not sure why. Or is it? I did have this issue in the live stream, TikTok live stream that I did with King Daniel. So I'm not really on TikTok as such. I have an account, but Stomaria doesn't have like a presence there. But King Daniel the Wayward does, and he uses it to discuss, amongst other things, Wayward. And so I joined him for a TikTok live, and in this live, so many people kept making like Mossad jokes or Israel commentary or whatever else, and it's because they think that the flag of Stomaria is the flag of Israel. And I made a point at the time saying that I feel like if you are going to have an opinion on Israel, regardless of what it is, you should at least know what the flag looks like. And you know what I mean? Does that look like the Star of David to you? I mean, I don't know. So I have very little patience for people that put their ignorance on full display. But that aside, an Israeli joke. Okay, well, I should have guessed, but there you go. Mika the Vamp says, I gotta go, have fun, goodbye, Mika, thank you for dropping by. Oh, jumped again. Dong says, turns out that a single bad year is all it takes for things to fall apart. We had a good run for that while, but you can't have everything. It seems maybe one day we'll go back to what it was. Doubt it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, life gets in the way, life changes, things move on. But I think it's fair to say that if you have put in the time and the energy and resources over the course of 10 years, then hopefully it was worth something to you. Hopefully you got some value out of it. When it comes to Stomaria, as I said earlier, I'm fully invested into it in the sense that I'm making this a generational nation building project. And so I do want to make sure that all the pieces are in place for that eventual transition. And over the course of the last 7 years, I don't think for anyone's criticisms of Stomaria, whatever they may be, it is undeniable that we have been extraordinarily consistent when it comes to keeping everyone updated in terms of our progress, in terms of our development, our values, our aspirations, our setbacks. I mean, there must be one or two posts or videos a week for the last 7 years. I mean, that's a hell of a mission. So we're talking well over 1,000 of these updates, and there are some entities out there that post 3 times and then dissolve. So I'm fully aware of the limitations when it comes to sort of like micronations or even some nation building projects, when it comes to their genuine commitment to actually building something. But I don't think there's any way that anyone would deny that what we are doing has had staying power, is genuine, and it is, you know, evidently very, very long term. And hopefully, for those that get involved, they will get some value out of it. PDRA says, hello, we have met again. Hello there. Austin says, what's a traditional dish of Stomaria? Well, I mean, we don't really have like a traditional dish in the sense that, I mean, I have plenty of food that I like, but I suppose they can't really be defined as Stomarian. You know, when it comes to like, you know, pub grub, fish and chips or whatever else, there are things that I like personally, but there's not like a Stomarian dish. But with that said, I think it is fair to say that a truly Stomarian dish would be apple and rhubarb crumble, because at Southwood, that is what we grow. We grow vast in comparatively speaking, vast amounts of rhubarb, which we use in crumbles, and that's something that I enjoy. That's something that my wife, Empress Samantha, enjoys, and it's something that our daughter, Princess Eleanor, enjoys. So, and our freezer is still full of, I say full, it's been whittled down now, but we still got a lot of rhubarb from last year's harvest, and we're starting to add to it now from this year's harvest. And I am actually going down to Southwood on Monday to do another harvest, as well as preparing the land for some glamping enterprises, because King Daniel and myself have been talking about this, and I think he's pulled the trigger and is going to buy a glamping tent with the intention of having glamping events at the land. So that's going to be exciting, and again, hopefully going to be generating some revenue for the Empire towards the acquisition of additional lands going forward. But yeah, I'd say like a rhubarb crumble or an apple and rhubarb crumble, that's a truly Stomarian dish, I think it's fair to say. The Raven says, no, pure silver. Is that in relation to a comment that someone made? But yes, our silver is pure silver. Yep, we don't deal with anything else other than that. PDRA says, I have a silver coin. Fantastic. Nabaya Music says, you guys will figure out the financials. Just stay positive and believe you'll succeed. Further. Sorry, I'm just going to take a quick drink of my honey drink here. For those that don't know, this honey water that I have sometimes during our live streams is our very own Stomarian honey. So this is actually, you know, Stomarian honey, Stomarian bees, Stomarian hives have produced this. It's our apicultural industry, as it were. And we have plenty of it. And so I use it for the live streams sometimes, because it helps to soothe the throat after talking for an hour, 2 hours, or whatever else. I mean, I think the longest I've ever done is probably just under 6 hours, I think it was. Whether or not we do that today, I don't know. It depends how busy the live stream gets. But yes, we'll see how we go. Sorry, what was the question? You guys will figure out the financials. Just stay positive and believe you'll succeed further. I think we will. I think we will progress. I think we will succeed. I think that the next step will be taken, but we've really got to go for it. We've really got to make the effort. We can't just say, oh, we'll do this at some point. We've come up with a plan of sorts. We've come up with a timetable. We've come up with various means to cut back spending as well as increasing revenue in order to try and generate revenue. And that's in part what this live stream is about. In fact, what I might do while I think about it, because I haven't done this, I completely forgot about this actually. Let's say all colors. I'm going to set one of our super chat goals, which I do sometimes. How you'll celebrate, what are we going to do? We're going to, no, we won't do anything really. We're going to put the funds towards the purchase of a new imperial province. Put the funds towards the purchase of a new imperial province. I think that'll do. 10 super chats, all colours, 3 hours. Yeah, that'll do. That's fine. And then we'll see how we go. Right. So where were we? I think we got to Nibaya music. Yep. Yep. Yeah, as I say, don't disagree. We are going to make it happen. Republic of Ceres. Hello there. What time is it in the UK at the moment? It is 6:15. I was able at one point. I don't know if I can now. Can I see? Can I see timestamps? Don't know why I can't. Oh no, I can. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there we go. Timestamps, top fans, reactions, participants, moderation activity. Can I? If I take this off, can I see? Ah. Sorry, I'm just learning as I go, evidently. So apparently moderation activity, I can see, because sometimes a lot of the, interesting, a lot of the comments in, I don't know if everyone else sees, but a lot of the comments during a live stream will say retracted, and I think it's YouTube retracting them, but I think I've inadvertently found a way to unretract them. Or at least I can see them, I think. Potentially. Have I turned it off or turned it on? I've turned it on. Interesting. Okay. Right, where were we? What time is it? Gabon says, I made the calendar 13 months, 14 does not fit. Okay. Almighty Cheese Lord. Components are similar, but still not an Israeli flag. No, it is most certainly not an Israeli flag. It is a blue flag, and it has a star on it. But that is the extent. In fact, prior to this whole everyone must hate Israel mindset that the algorithm has decided needs to be fed to everyone that cares to listen, our flag was never ever compared to the Israeli flag, but it was often compared to the Canadian flag because it has a very similar design. It's got different colours and a different emblem, but otherwise it's more or less exactly the same. But yes, until more recently, it's never been compared or been an issue on that front. Sorry, got distracted for a second there. Republic of Ceres says, I can't grow anything here. What do I do? It depends where you are. If you're in the woods like us, then you'll need to get some shade-tolerant plants. If the soil quality is not quite where it needs to be, then you'll need to, gauge the HP levels of the soil. And oh, sorry. Oh, we got a contribution from Nibur Music. Thank you very much. So for those that don't know, if any contributions that we get through our Patreon campaign, any contributions that we get through the super chats, I will jump to the super chats and then jump back, only because I think it's fair. So let me just quickly check what this comment says. Nation of Nibaya. Nation of Nibaya sends its regards. Thank you very much. And just for the record, is it Nibaya? Because I keep saying Nibaya, but I just want to make sure. Because pronunciation, if you've watched my live streams before, pronunciation is not my thing. It's not my strong suit. The command of the English language apparently eludes me. But yeah, thank you very much for the contribution. It's greatly appreciated. And make sure everyone in the chat goes and gives their thanks to Nibaya as well, because every contribution we get, be it a dollar, a pound, hang on, Nibuya. Okay, Nibuya. The nation of Nibuya sends its regards, and I would like everyone in the chat to go and give their comment a like, give them a comment thanking them and all the rest of it, because as I say, every dollar, every pound, every penny, every cent that we can raise is a major win for us, is a major boost to what we're trying to do, and it is encouraging. It, not to put too fine a point at it, it does really encourage me to do this more often, because I have been in, if I do 4, 5, 6, 7 hour live streams or whatever else. And as much as I enjoy the interactions and all the rest of it and the conversations that we have, it is nice to know that in the background there is something going on in terms of a financial reward for Stomaria, because otherwise I could use that time to do something else to advance the interests of Stomaria, in terms of raising capital and revenue for it. So massively appreciated. I mean, that $5 contribution, as far as I'm concerned, it's made the whole day and the whole live stream worthwhile. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated. I mean, for what it's worth, though I have been doing it for some time, we've really ramped up operations here in terms of selling like new clothes that we've never worn, or games, or bits of furniture, everything. We've ramped up in our own household the effort to raise additional capital for this this drive, this purpose that we're going for. So when I come onto live streams and I'm talking about people joining Patreon or making super chats or whatever else, it's not because I'm not doing anything. It's just that the more that we can do collectively, the better. And as I say, I'm making every effort in my power to make sure we build up enough capital as we can in order to push us over that line, that target that we have of somewhere between £7,500 and £15,000 for the next plot. And incidentally, we are we're going to be in a kind of competition of sorts, like a friendly competition with the Kingdom of Wayward to see who can reach the target first. Of course, as a member state of the Empire, it doesn't go into the same pot exactly unless we do a joint purchase agreement, but it obviously advances both of our interests. But we thought a bit of friendly competition might be in order to see who can muster the most financial resources for our respective projects. But we've not yet sort of formally announced anything on that front, but that will probably be coming. Right, where do we get to? Raven says, Republic of Ceres, why can't you grow stuff? Republic of Ceres says, also my Amazon package for my Micronation I want to start will be here in 4 weeks. Okay, so an Amazon package for your Micronation you want to start. So are you talking about like some goods from Amazon that you're going to use to advance the interests of the Republic of Ceres? Because I assumed it was already a thing, but maybe it's just like the preliminary stages, I guess. It's too cold in the winter, kills everything. Well, yeah, no, if you're going to try to grow things in the winter, then I can probably tell you what the problem is. I think you've probably answered your question. You'll have to wait for the spring and summer months like everyone else, I'm afraid. We are, well, unless you have like a greenhouse or something, I guess you could go down that route. But from our perspective, we try to grow things in the spring, or whenever the herbs or fruits or vegetables or whatever else that we do decide to plant are supposed to be seeded and planted. And they said that last year got to -20. Yep, that'll do it. That'll definitely kill it. Oh, there you go. The Raven says exactly the same thing. You could get a greenhouse. There we go. See? Great minds think alike. Right. So, house rules. If you're going to have conversations with each other, more than happy for you to do so, but I'm probably not going to read them out because, it's just going to... It won't be relevant. It won't feed into the conversation. So that is fine. The Raven says, does anyone get my 999 pure silver joke? Oh, I see. No silver, 999. 999 fine silver. Yeah, okay, very good. I did wonder what that comment was about. I think it went over my head, quite far over the head, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have been in that same boat. Thank you for clarifying. That makes more sense now. Sabe says, is Spider-Man cool? An interesting topic of conversation. I suppose it depends on what your version of Spider-Man is. I suppose my Spider-Man, the sort of, I can't even remember the actor's name now. But there's like 4 or 5 now, isn't there? 3, 4, 5 Spider-Man, like the actors. I want to say it's like the original Spider-Man that I like, but I don't know if it is the original Spider-Man. So we're talking like, is it late 90s, early 2000s? I'm not even sure when it was. But that's I've not watched Spider-Man since then. So based purely on that, I'm going to have to say that yes, Spider-Man is cool, but based purely on my own recollection of watching the Spider-Man movies and playing Spider-Man games when I was, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12, or however old I was at the time. Austin says, do you like DC or Marvel more? DC is obviously the right answer. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really a superhero guy, really. It's not really kind of the genre that I'm interested in. I don't, you know, I'm not waiting for the next Iron Man movie or the next Batman movie or the next Superman movie or whatever else. I'm not really into that. When it comes to movies, I'm far more interested in like historical dramas. I mean, I suppose the Odyssey would be an interesting talking point at some point. Might have to be quite careful treading on those eggshells, but bit of controversy around that one. But I like the old school. Again, I keep saying old school. It's like early to mid 2000s kind of genre of like historical movies. So Kingdom of Heaven, Troy, um, you know, 300, whatever else. You know, these sorts of historical movies I find to be more interesting rather than, you know, superhero movies. And that's been the case since I've been like, I don't know, 12 years old, I guess. But, you know, to each their own. Everyone has their preferences. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just me, and other people might have different opinions on this, but I do feel like, and this is just the old man shouting at cloud kind of rant that I'm gonna have. I do feel like movies today are not as good as they were in like late 90s and early 2000s, and maybe that's just me, maybe that's just my nostalgia, but it just seems like every attempt to recreate in some form or another, or even to create something new, but more often than not to recreate what a movie back in the late 90s or the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, it always just comes off as like cheap and tacky and like politically motivated with political messaging, and you know, it just rubbed me the wrong way. It's like the ring. I don't know, a good example would be the Rings of Power. Absolutely shocking quality in every shape and form compared to the original Lord of the Rings. But I suppose you go even further. Even The Hobbit wasn't as good as the original Lord of the Rings. Still not, wasn't as bad, but you can definitely, you know, if anyone says The Hobbit is better than Lord of the Rings, they don't know what they're talking about. But it's the same with virtually everything, I guess. Jurassic Park. We actually watched that, me and my wife, when obviously the late great Sam Neill died. We hopped onto Netflix and we watched Jurassic Park for the first time in many years. And I remember I was sat there watching it. I was thinking, it's like, this is a good movie. And then you watch like the latest iteration of you know, the Jurassic Park, the Jurassic World franchise, and you think, this is just, it's just not good. You know, you can do all the CGI you want and spend hundreds of millions on it, but it's just not a good movie. And I can't really put my finger on it, but everything just feels like a cheap imitation of stuff, and everything just feels fake and repetitive, and it does grate on me a little bit. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the tangent because that's what we'll do. The Raven says people can delete their comments and it shows as retracted. Well, the thing is, I thought that was the case. I thought deleted comments were retracted comments, but I don't know if it was YouTube that was retracting them because it's never clear to me. I'm not like a tech guy, and I keep hearing like conflicting answers to these same questions when I try to find these results or try to find the answer to these questions. But yeah, it is what it is. Republic of Sarah says, found one that should work. It's $1,999. Found what that would work? Land or something else? You have to clarify. Republic of Sarah says it should be cheaper to make one yourself. What are we talking about? I might have forgotten a part of the conversation that I've already been privy to, but I'm not sure what you're talking about. Yeah, you're going to have to, when you make a comment, and this goes for everyone really, when you make a comment, you have to make it a self-contained comment as much as you can. If you reference something that was said 45 minutes ago, I'm not likely to draw that line. So keep it concise and keep it together. Sabe says, Spider-Man or Iron Man? I'm going to say Iron Man just because I think he's cooler, frankly. I do think he's more interesting, a character. And yeah, a bit of Tony Stark. But as I say, I know of these, but I think I've probably watched one, maybe two Iron Man movies, which would be the first and the second one. Since then, I don't know what has happened or what is going on. I don't know if they're still around. I don't know if he's, died or passed the mantle on to another actor, or if it's just finished entirely. I don't know. But yeah, my first impression of Iron Man and my first impression of Spider-Man, I would say that Iron Man was more interesting from my own perspective. Right, so we caught up there, Oh. Nibuya says, I based the name off Japanese. Oh, okay, well, that probably makes a bit more sense. But this is the thing, when it comes to names of your projects, be it micronations or nation building projects, or however you might define it, when it comes to the pronunciation of the name, it's really something you have to think about, because if you get me as a litmus test, as an example, if I can't pronounce your name right off the bat, then it's not to say you have to change it, but it's just something that you need to be conscious of going forward, because maybe I'm not the best at pronouncing things clearly. But if I'm having those problems, then other people may also have those problems. And so you might need to prepare yourself for that on some level. It doesn't mean you have to change it if it's impactful or meaningful to you and distinguished and whatever else, but just something to consider. Unluck Jackie says, good day to you. Republic of Solar says, even in the summer, it's averaging in the 30s Fahrenheit. Where do you live? It sounds miserable. I'm not surprised you can't grow anything. It'd have to be some very hardy plants. Yeah, the Raven says, do you live in Alaska? Yeah, it was kind of my impression as well. Or some island off the Alaskan coast, maybe. Oh, Republic of Saris, Alaskan Islands area. Actually, I remember having this conversation with you. Yeah, I do remember. I can't believe you get Amazon out on the Alaskan frontier, like on some Alaskan island. You get Amazon packages. Crazy. Make use of that Amazon Prime, I guess. Austin says, Tobey Maguire, the OG, is my favourite. The Raven says, agree, movies today are not great. Project Hail Mary is an exception. I've not seen Project Hail Mary, but I am interested in actually seeing it. The thing with movies, especially these days, is that often I just don't have time to sit down and watch it. And that's why I tend to watch series more, because I can watch it in like short snippets. Whereas with a movie, I find it a struggle to like stop and start and stop and start. So recently, just another tangent, we started to watch. Well, I say what I'm rewatching, but Samantha is watching for the first time the Viking series, and I really do enjoy the Viking series. I'm having to fast forward some of the gorier bits, the blood eagles, the sacrifices, human sacrifices, things like that. Because some of those don't agree with Samantha at all, and I don't want to put her off. But I would like to watch Vikings, and then I think it's Vikings Valhalla, but also like Rome, the series. I'm not even sure I'd find that, to be honest, but I'm sure it's somewhere. That's something I want to watch with Samantha as well. Because going back to what I was saying earlier, I like historical movies. I like historical series and all the rest of it. And you don't get many historical movies these days. Certainly that I'm aware of. Certainly not good ones. So, you know, I'm forced to go back, you know, 5, 10, 20 years to get something decent. Hey, hey. It's the world we live in today. Austin says, yeah, I agree. Movies today feel like a product rather than a passion. Even with video games, everything feels ultra processed and made only to sell. Again, I have similar complaints. I suppose, well, I'm not like the most prolific gamer in the world, but if I had to put down like a hobby or an interest, gaming would be one of them. I'm an Xbox guy myself, so I like the original Gears of War or Call of Duty or Halo, and various other iterations of that, or Metro 2033, and these sorts of games. And I think it's the same with movies. It's just like the originals. You always, whenever you play something newer and then you go back to play the originals, you just find the originals, or at least I do, to be just a better game. And that's often with more limited resources. And I don't know if it's because maybe less financial resources means you've really got to invest more heavily in like the story, I guess, as opposed to just throwing in a bunch of, you know, action sequences and really cool graphics, but then the plot or the storyline is complete trash or whatever else. This is weird. This is becoming like a gaming movie rant review live stream, which is not my intention, but I'm only responding to the questions that I'm getting. But yeah, everything just feels like, I don't know, profit margin rather than storytelling is the goal. And I guess there has to be a profit aspect to it, but I feel like there's room for both, and I feel like one is prioritized over the other. The Raven says, speaking about greenhouses, I'm thinking about starting a nation building project. I'm not yet sure I want to, though. Well, this is the thing. If you have your own passion, if you have your own values and ideals, and they don't mesh well with anything else that you've seen around, then I would recommend you go down the path of establishing your own community, your own nation, and all the rest of it. If you have the staying power, if you have the passion, the drive to see it through, because I think there's nothing worse than investing vast amounts of your time, your energy, and your resources into something that ultimately doesn't go anywhere, but also you don't gain anything from. So if you walk away from a project that you've been going on for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever else, and it ends up failing anyway, but along the way you've managed to learn new skills, or acquire lands that you can utilize for different purposes or whatever else. These you've really got to take into consideration what you want to get out of it. But on the whole, I would say that if it is something that is interesting to you, then absolutely go and pursue it. I mean, Stomaria, as I made clear earlier in this video, is basically based off my own interest in civilization creation, which was inspired by an RTS game in the early 2000s. That's ultimately where the spark for Stomaria was initiated. That's where the line starts. And so, you can do it for the most mundane reasons imaginable, but you actually have to have an interest in it. You actually have to want to do it. And that's the thing about me and Stomaria and, what I do. I've said before, if Stomaria completely fell apart, if every lord and lady of Stomaria abandoned ship, if all the citizens stopped contributing to the Patreon campaign, if the land was repossessed or whatever else, I would still come in and I would still push Stomaria forward. I would still be, doing the videos. I'd still have the flags up. I'd be, maybe doing it under a bridge or something, but I would not let the project die. The project will die when I die and there's no one else to take it on. But as long as I am still going, Stomaria will still go. And again, this is why I'm quite keen on making sure that this gets passed on to Princess Eleanor when the time comes, or potentially to Empress Samantha, and then Princess Eleanor. It depends on how old Princess Eleanor is when I, pop the clogs. That's why I would always encourage people to start going down this path. But as I've already made clear, just make sure you understand from the get-go what it is you want to get out of it, and then make sure that whatever that is, you are going to commit to. Because otherwise you might end up spending time, money, and energy on something that you could have done something else with. and if you get no value out of it, then it is what it is. But what I would say is that for those that are unsure about if they want to start their own projects, but maybe they're interested in the nation building experience, you should join an existing one. And I'm not saying this because you should join Stomaria specifically. Obviously, it'd be great to have you and all the rest of it. But if there is a project out there that resonates with you more strongly, Asgardia or Slowjamastan or trying to think of the top 10s, Ironland, not really on the top 10, but I don't know, Ladonia, Westarctica, those sorts of projects. If those resonate with you more highly than they do with Stomaria or any other project going out there, then you might want to consider just getting involved with them. I don't quote me on what you can actually do as a system of these different projects or whatever else, but if you're sitting on the fence as to whether or not you should start your own, then maybe it would be a good idea to join an existing one and then seeing how things go. And if you want to join, if you want to start another one further down the line, then there's nothing to stop you from doing that if you want. So just my 2 cents on the matter for that one. Nuboya says, the name is simplistic to me, just pronounce the actual letters. Yeah, again, I suppose it's the same when as I said earlier in this video, when it comes to Stomaria and Stomaria, there's different pronunciations of it, but it still basically means the same thing. So as long as you're comfortable with people such as myself mispronouncing it from time to time, but getting the overarching wording correct, then as long as you're happy with that, I'm sure it'll be fine. Republic of Sarah says, it takes a very long time to get my packages. I don't doubt it. If you're getting it from an island, if they're being delivered to an island in Alaska, I'm sure it will take about as long as it takes to get anywhere in the world. Austin says, I didn't know you had ball knowledge like that, Mr. Emperor. Ball knowledge. Is that like baller knowledge, as in, I mean, you're obviously of a generation, but I'm a... you'll have to maybe explain that to me a little bit more. But yeah, I am a person. I'm not just the Emperor of Stomaria. I have other interests. I have other hobbies and I suppose passions in some respects, and opinions on the wider world. And a lot of people obviously just know me for Stomaria and for the nation building project and the activities that we engage in. But there's obviously a lot more to me than that. The Raven says, I've designed a flag and stuff. We produce strawberries, cucumbers, lettuce, garlic, eggs, tomatoes, peppers, dill, etc. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, going on the agricultural route is kind of the bread and butter with this game. If you go down the route of establishing a nation or a community, normally it is an agrarian economy, or apiculture or animal husbandry or something to that effect, forestry. That a lot of projects go down. That's something that no shade. I mean, that's how we got going. I kind of tell a lie, I guess. I mean, before Stomaria had Southward, where we could actually grow our own produce, our go-to was the production of silver stater coins, because we use those as a medium of exchange with the intention, which is very much true to this day, I suppose, but with the intention of turning Stomaria into a conduit of trade and commerce and enterprise between all the member states and allies of the empire. That is to say, if you've got one nation here and one nation there, one's growing carrots and the other one's growing eggs, or whatever else, producing eggs. Sorry, it's getting on in the live stream. I'm starting to lose focus. One's growing carrots, one's producing eggs. They can, maybe they don't want to trade with each other, just eggs for carrots, or whatever else. But using the silver stater coin as a medium of exchange, we can act as a conduit to acquire those resources and then either distribute them or utilize them ourselves. And that was the intention of having the stater coins and the stater bars in the first place, is not only to act as a conduit for trade and commerce and enterprise within the empire and with our external partners, but also to encourage people to go down that route. Because acquiring silver through the acquisition of stater bars by engaging in trade and commerce and everything is, I would suggest, the easiest and the cheapest way to acquire silver. Because our silver the value of the status is based on the spot price of silver. But as anyone that's ever purchased silver will know, you don't buy silver at the spot price. There's always a premium on top of that. And Stomaria absorbs that premium ourselves to encourage this facilitation of trade and commerce, with the expectation that it will begin to circulate within our respective communities, and then again build up our respective industries within nation A and nation B and nation C. If they are building industries based on the utilization of silver, because they want to acquire the silver, then that not only advances their own interests, but advances the interests of everyone else involved in that network that we are building. And again, this was a game plan for many years, and has remained as such ever since. So what was the question? Yes, your agricultural industry. Yeah, absolutely. Just be sure that, I suppose the one thing I would say is that make sure that when you are going down the route of producing or growing crops, vegetables, herbs, fruits, whatever else, that they are things that you yourself will consume, because the expectation should be that maybe you want to trade, maybe you want to sell some of it, but you don't want to grow vast amounts of it and then not have a use for it. And if you don't like it, then it's not much point in growing it, even if you can grow it. So as an example, we grow massive amounts of rhubarb because all of our family, like the imperial family, we eat rhubarb. If we didn't like rhubarb, we probably wouldn't be growing it, because if we can't rely on trade and commerce to get rid of it, then we're just left with a bunch of rhubarb that we can't actually utilize. So make sure, basically what I'm saying is, whatever you grow, just make sure you like it. And I'm sure that is exactly what you're doing. But I suppose that's just more some generic advice to people out there. I think the example I've used in the past is your land and your climate might be absolutely ideal for growing grapefruit. But if you don't like grapefruit, then I don't think there's much point in growing it. That's my 2 cents on that one anyway. Right. Where are we? Republic of Sarah says, is there anything you see in a Micronations name that you would cancel trade with? Well, I suppose it depends on the nature of the name. If the name had any kind of communistic or fascistic or extremist undertones in any shape or form, then obviously it's not something that we're going to engage with. Case in point, any name of a micronation or a nation building project that starts with People's Republic of, yeah, next, not interested, I wouldn't even contemplate it. I don't care what they have to say, it is just next. Or there are vast numbers, comparatively speaking, of self-defined micronations, and if you go onto like MicroWiki, you'll see this yourself. There are large numbers of micronations out there which actually have things like fascist in the name of their micronations themselves. So it'll be like the fascist state of X, Y, and Z. And there is something about micronationalism that does bring out the very worst in people, in terms of them, advocating for communism, for fascism, and often for neo-Nazism, and then kind of playing it off as a joke of the lols, of the memes. And then there are others that are a bit more dedicated to that ideology. But whatever the case, it's just not a good thing to promote. And so if I see any hint of that in the name, it's just an automatic no. Same with the flag. If it's a red flag, and just a red flag is generally, that already sounds alarm bells. If I see the hammer and sickle in there incorporated in some form, it's like an automatic no. Fascistic symbols, is a given. So yeah, and I suppose on the other side of the spectrum, if it's a quite self-evidently satirical name, unless there's a particular reason that we'd want to engage with that particular entity, then there's not likely going to be any real trade or commerce or enterprise or real engagement. There are obviously going to be exceptions to this over the years, I'm sure, but as a general rule, we want to engage with those that are serious about what they're building and aren't looking to build some sort of extremist community, or suggesting that they're going to build some kind of extremist community. If I don't feel comfortable with associating with it, then I can't imagine that anyone in Stomaria is as well. So that's that. Austin says stoma. Yep, that is what they say. If that's in reference to what the phraseology is in Empire Earth, that's what we're going back to an earlier conversation in the video. Austin says ball knowledge equals well informed in a certain field. Gen Z lingo. Yeah. Evidently, I'm not a Gen Zer. I'm a millennial, and you know, best generation. Just saying. Yeah, I'm not up to date with the Gen Z lingo. I'm afraid it's not something I keep on top of. But thank you for informing me. Ball knowledge, good to know. Republic of Sarah says paper money is easier to mass produce and trade, so you can fund up your allies quicker and cheaper. Paper money is also inherently worthless, especially if you're producing it yourself, which is why we use silver. If someone offered me a stack of cash that they produced at home and was tied to absolutely nothing, or even if it was tied to something, I'm not going to accept this wad of paper in return for my services or my goods or my products, which is why we use silver. Because if I say, I will take your jams, I will take your potatoes, I will take your eggs or whatever else, and I will give you a commodity, a hard commodity, pure silver in exchange for that, then people are going to be far more ready to accept that exchange rather than just some bits of pretty coloured paper which they will not be able to do anything with at any point. Austin says, how do you even give the paper money you make actual... How do you even give the paper money you make actual value? Exactly my point. The only way you would be able to give it value, realistically, in the context of what we're building or what we're talking about, is to peg it to something. But the reality is, and I've said this before, if you're going to peg it to something, why not just use that something that you are pegging it to? Because ultimately, if I say I have a 100-gram silver bar, and I have created 100 notes, and each of these notes is representative of 1 gram of silver. Okay, you've got 100 notes, it's backed by a 100-gram silver bar. But if someone acquires 50 of these notes, they can't redeem it for the silver bar because it's just 1 bar. So it's pointless. So it might technically be pegged to it, but if you can't actually redeem it, then it's not pegged to anything. So again, this is why we use silver as a commodity money. This is why we use commodity to trade, because it's not saying, oh, we're going to promise you that you can exchange it with something else, or that in the future you might be able to exchange it with something else or whatever else. You will actually get the physical commodity. It does make trade engagement a little bit more challenging at times, but at the same time, why else would you do it any other way? Because, you know, speaking from my perspective, I wouldn't do it any other way, and so I wouldn't expect anyone else to either. So yeah, exactly the point I was making, Austin. And I think we actually caught up. The Raven says, the name I chose for my theoretical quote-unquote micronation is... Oh, here we go. Spiteria or Spiteria. It is a modified version of the Latin phrase, land of hope. Spiteria or Spiteria? Spiteria, Spiteria. Okay, well, as you say, talking about names that I can't pronounce. But when it comes to building your own nation, your own project, you know, I say, you know, go for it if you think you're going to get some value out of it. But if you're not, then, or if you're not sure why you're doing it, or if you're going to be certain that it's going to be something you're going to stick with, or if you're not certain you're going to get some genuine value out of it, again, I don't like dissuading people from not going down this path, because obviously, you know, I've made entire series about this sort of thing. But I would encourage you to consider it carefully. Sorry, I'm just having a quick look at something while we're talking. While I'm talking. Okay, good. So just while I think about it, since I've got a moment, I am going to try to see if I can log in to Reddit again, because I'm still a bit perplexed as to why I can't get in. No, it still says it's invalid. Very, very frustrating. But it still says I exist, apparently. Most interesting. Okay, anyway, I won't waste too much time on it. It's not exactly riveting stuff. Oh, Raven says it's Spy Terrier. So I got it wrong on both accounts, I think. Spy, or did I say Spy Terrier? Spy Terrier. Yeah, Republic of Sarah says you can work on creating multiple satellite states to force your currency on whale monitoring. Wait, whoa, sorry. To force your currency on whale monitoring them to kill self-reliance so they cannot split off your orbit. I mean, I'm not looking to force people to remain a part of the Empire through some sort of currency manipulation of any kind. So that's obviously not a route that we're going to go down. The Empire is built on voluntary affiliation and voluntary association. If people want to become a part of Stomaria, want to become a part of the Empire, we're happy for them to do so. But I'm not here to use force or threats or coercion or blackmail or any kind of nefarious activity to try to get people to join or force them to stay, because that's not what Stomaria is about. We're about individual liberty. We're about freedom. We're about personal choice and personal responsibility and personal the consequences of that comes with that. And the idea that I would try to manipulate people or force people down a particular path, that's just not my style. I prefer to be an open book about what we are, what we stand for, what we're looking to achieve and how we're going to achieve it. And if people want to get involved, they can. And if later on they decide to leave, they can. By and large, I don't begrudge people that join up in Stomaria and then decide that it's not for them after all, or if their projects fade out. There are situations that obviously have warranted public commentary with some entities in the past for one reason or another, but it wasn't just because they left or whatever else. There was obviously something more to it. But that's going off on a tangent. But the bottom line is that, again, we're about voluntary association, voluntary affiliation, and I only want people to be a part of the Empire if they genuinely want to be a part of it and to remain a part of it. Austin says, what's your top 3 micronations? Easy. Stomaria, Wayward, New Esperance. Next. If you want to clarify not being associated or affiliated with Stomaria the Empire, more complex question, but easy answer otherwise. Republic of Sarah says, buy the land, get your citizens to use the land, kind of like your own gated community. Well, I mean, we are going to buy our own land, and our citizens will inevitably at some point use the land. It won't be a gated community as such, but Stomarian lands will be used by Stomarian citizens. Of that, I have no doubt, especially those who obviously have invested towards that land. So yeah, when it comes to utilization of land, all the land that we acquire is not like someone's family home. Like this property that I'm in now, this is our family home. This is the Imperial family's home. This is not Stomarian territory. This is not classed in any shape or form as Stomarian lands. Because why would it? I mean, it's not like I can host gatherings here. It's not like I'm going to invite people to live here. It's not like I'm going to be able to utilize this space to advance the interests of the community at large by hosting gatherings or events or festivals or anything like that. So the land that we purchase is specifically Stomarian in nature, and that means that we will be able to host gatherings and events there. People will be able to stay on the land intermittently or establish industries, grow food and whatever else. It will be for the community to utilize rather than just myself, which is obviously what our family home is. It's just for the use of the Imperial family. Austin says, yeah, why not hold the citizens hostage, Mr. Emperor, according to Ceres. Yeah, hold the citizens hostage. Well, this is what the kind of vibe that I'm getting. I think maybe being on a cold Alaskan island has maybe warped Ceres's viewpoints a little bit, but I have no intention of keeping anyone within Stomaria or the Empire, be they citizens or member states, if they do not wish to initially join and if they do not wish to remain, because that is not what we're about. Voluntary association, voluntary affiliation, that is our driving means of growth, of development, and expansion. and it's all going to be done through legal and legitimate means, especially when it comes to the acquisition of lands. But yeah, that aside, we're not intended to keep anyone hostage or entice or encourage or dissuade people from leaving through various currency manipulation tactics or gated communities, which kind of veers off into the cult-like region, cult-like territory. Republic of Sarah says, if they know that 3 Micronations cannot survive without you, they will not leave you. I mean, a lot of Micronations have joined us and have, folded not long after leaving, and some were on the way out before they left or were removed from Stomaria. I did mention it earlier in the video. So we had the Kingdom of Molossia, which joined in March 2022. They left in December 2022, and I think they more or less folded within the span of a few months after that. So I'd say like early 2023, mid 2023. I mean, you might say that they technically exist in the sense they've not made a formal, they're not formally dissolved as such, but their website was deleted, their Facebook page was deleted or removed, a lot of their videos on their YouTube channel were removed, and they've made 0 publications since I think January 2023. So they no longer exist by and large, which is a shame because I liked Slowjamastan and I did quite like Neve, and I have been in touch with her since then. But the reality is that it just doesn't seem to exist anymore. Likewise, Branhal, the first Branhal joined in November 2022 and left a few weeks later in December 2022, mercifully. And they folded, I think, again in 2023, maybe 2024, in the sense that all of their accounts were likewise deleted. They've made no efforts to promote themselves on their own YouTube channel, whatever else, for years at this point. So they, again, folded. And then you had Prince of Morland. I have spoken to Prince Alexander of Morland since, but again, they folded, I suppose technically as a part of the Empire. They kind of went inactive for a while, and then we decided to remove them entirely from the Empire because they weren't active participants in it, so it was pointless having them as nothing more than a flag on our website. And then the Kingdom of Norwick, they went inactive almost immediately after they joined Stomaria, but they kept contributing financially to us during that time. So they were kept along because there was no stipulation at that point that they had to be active inside the Empire in order to remain a member state of the Empire. That's something that we did introduce in 2023, which is why Norwick and Morland were both removed after we made the additional criteria that the member states had to be active and engaged, because otherwise they're just flags on the website and it doesn't mean anything to anyone. So they were removed. Where are we? Republic of Vesta, they joined in November 2022, and they merged into Stomaria in, when was it? Was it May, maybe? May 2026, so earlier this year. But Consul David of Vesta, or formerly Consul David of Vesta, is still active as a Lord of Stomaria, as Lord Christensen. So that doesn't really count, I guess. But yeah, we have had member states leave before for various different reasons, or being removed from the Empire for various reasons. But yeah, forgot the initial comment that led me on to that. But yes, that's where we're at. Republic of Sarah says, you're not holding them hostage, they can leave whenever they want, but the government needs you to make sure the government is poor, so if it cuts support, they will fall, their people will leave, and they will simply I guess it means just sort of go to the exit. Yeah, but destroying other people's projects isn't really what I'm about. I mean, I want to elevate people, I want to build people up. That's what the Empire is about. I don't want the member states to be exclusively reliant on Stomaria or the Empire. If they feel in their heart of hearts that they'd be doing better outside of Stomaria, then I wish them all well for the future. It's simple as that. I'm not looking to hold people against their will or make life difficult for them if they decide to leave. You know, like when Norwich or Moreland were removed from the Empire, I didn't bear them any ill will at all. I didn't, you know, wish them destruction or whatever else. Even when Branhau and Selossia left, I didn't make a special attempt to try to undermine or destroy them. The only reason that we made any content about them at all is because of their efforts in the opening months of them leaving, trying to get people to move to Transnistria, which is a breakaway state in Moldova. That's under Russian military occupation, and they were getting people encouraging people to move there. And because of their association with Stomaria, a lot of people assumed that this had something to do with us, because, you know, a lot of people would never have heard of Branhau or Selossia without them being a part of Stomaria. And I was getting messages about this, and so we did put out some videos saying this had nothing to do with us. But that aside, there wasn't a huge amount to say about Selossia or Branhau after they left. You know, by and large, I would have liked, especially Selossia, to have prospered, and I would still like to see them prosper. But as has been clear over time, those outside of the Empire do tend to fade very, very quickly when they leave it. And that's just a simple truth, and that's just backed up by reality. So, you know, it is what it is. But I'm not gunning for that. I'm not hoping, I'm not aspiring for their destruction. So, yeah, your kind of philosophy isn't really winning me over, I'm afraid. Austin says, so would it be appropriate to say that you are a kind of president emperor in exile since you do not live inside the empire? I mean, I suppose we could say that. Yeah, a nomadic emperor of sorts. You know, maybe one day, once we've built up enough capital, or the imperial family specifically has built up enough capital to build an imperial palace somewhere and make it a permanent capital of the empire, maybe then it'll be a part of the Stomarian Empire. But as of now, we are quite happy in our humble home, dedicating time, energy, and resources towards bettering our own lives, which doesn't necessarily include buying an imperial palace for ourselves at this time, and instead dedicating more resources into acquiring lands that will help the community at large, which is our goal at the moment. Daniel Ferguson says, I thank you for allowing me to be part of the Empire. Thank you, Daniel. I'm glad to have you supporting us in the way that you do. Republic of Sarah says, make sure their government is poor, so it can, yeah, we've already read that, so that's fine. I say it's fine, it's not fine, it's not what we're looking to do, but Austin says, yes, Mr. Emperor, trust 12-year-old with poor English with financial advice. I get that kind of advice all the time, I'm afraid. It's just the nature of the game in this kind of world. Republic of Sarah says, are we going to keep talking about this? I mean, if that is what you want to do, but we shall see which one of us will be the most successful. Well, I mean, you know, more power to you if you think you can be more successful in Stomaria. I wish you luck with your ventures. I hate it altogether. Transestrin. Flag of Stomaria, meaning... Flag of Stomaria, meaning what does the colours... What does the colours mean? Okay, well, I'm guessing that's your way of saying what are the colours of Stomaria, what's the symbolism of Stomaria's flag. So, colours. Dark blue, well, going back a peg, I suppose. The colours blue and white is very symbolic in our own household. Blue and white is a favourite colour combination of both myself and Empress Samantha. In fact, it was the colour combination, not this exact blue, but it was the colour combination of our wedding. Now, in terms of the actual specific colours of the flag, the colour blue, this particular shade, the darker blue, is supposed to symbolise strength. So a dark blue, a sort of an elegant colour, it's quite a regal colour in some respects, but it is also a colour that resonates power and strength, and so that's what that is. Whereas the white, which contrasts it, is supposed to represent a kind of purity, a kind of goodness, and that's, I suppose, to a lot of people a bit of a naff thing to highlight, to suggest, But I think the idea, the concept of just being a good person, I think is maybe lost on a lot of people these days, but I think it's something that is worth promoting. In terms of the actual symbolism itself, the eight-pointed star of Stomaria is actually derived from the ancient star which was highlighted in ancient Sumeria, specifically the Star of Ishtar. And the reason that we have chosen this particular star, this particular emblem, is because it is something that represents the cradle of human civilization in some respects, because the Sumerian civilization is widely considered, with a lot of justification, to be the cradle of human civilization as we know it. It's the place of the first cities, the first major agriculture, and all the rest. So the Fertile Crescent region, that is where human civilization as we know it began. Obviously civilization sprang up across the world independently of one another to some degree or another, but this is where the first instances of genuine human civilization started. And what we are doing is creating our own society, our own nation, our own civilization. And so being able to borrow a piece of that from that time and have it represented in our flag was very important. And as an aside, something else that a lot of people don't seem to fully appreciate, although we have discussed in the past, is that the flag of Stomaria, when I was designing it, it was done in a way where I could create a flag which would not look out of place where it stood alongside the flags of modern nations. And I think it does that. I don't think it looks majorly out of place in amongst if I had a lineup of flags, of national flags, and Stomaria's flag was in there, it wouldn't look too out of place. But also I wanted a flag that if it were flown in antiquity, in ancient past, it wouldn't look out of place there either, I would suggest. So that's another reason why I wanted to do that. And this is the thing about Stomaria that you need to understand, is that a lot of what we do, and a lot of the terminologies that we use, and a lot of the names we use for certain things, has its connections, has its influence from various civilizations of the ancient past. A good example of that would be the stater coins and the stater bars that I referenced earlier in the video. Stater is a name of the ancient Lydian coin back some 2,500 years ago. And this was the first, or one of the first instances of money, genuine money, being used in and amongst human societies. And so the reason that we use the name stater is because that is what the ancient Lydians called their own money. They refer to them as staters, or that's certainly our modern interpretation of it. And so the ancient Lydian stater is why we have the modern Stomarian stater, to pay homage to the fact that the first genuine money, silver and gold staters that were used in the ancient past are still being used today through Stomaria. Or even the structure of the empire. I mean, you could highlight various empires throughout human history which kind of have our kind of structure, our kind of federal structure. But I suppose the Achaemenid Empire, the Persian Empire, where it had various satrapies and satraps governing them, or provinces and provincial governors, as we would understand it in more modern terms. That's how we're structured, with member states being divided into provinces. And our drive for trade, commerce, and enterprise to build an empire based on that, rather than force or coercion or conquest or anything of that nature, that kind of philosophy is in part driven by ancient Carthage, which itself was an empire, but unlike a lot of other empires, that was driven purely by the desire to engage in trade and commerce, to have a network where all parties, by and large, would prosper. So we look at the ancient past, and I look at the ancient past, and I look at how ancient civilizations operated, what they had going for them, what was unique about them, what was special about them, and I try to take anything that I think is going to be applicable, anything that's going to work in Stomaria, and I take all these elements and make Stomaria kind of a hybrid nation, where it has pulled all of these influences from all of these different places and all of these different time periods to build what amounts to a new nation in the modern world, based on all of the things that our ancient ancestors have taught us in some form or another. So yeah, that again, that was the reason that we have the 8-pointed star, because it's from ancient Sumeria. The Raven says, "I don't blame you. I can't pronounce Transrestrian either." Yeah, that's what I mean. People join the chat always come up with the most complex names for me to pronounce. It really is very frustrating. Austin says, "What about the 2 blue stripes?" Well, that's well pointed out. But the 2 blue stripes on the end, that was not originally my plan, because my plan was to have a flag which was had a ratio of 2:1, which is one of the more common flag designs in the world. But the problem is, if I had the blue star on a purely white background, it just looked, the star just got lost in the white. It was too much white. And so we needed to fill in the gaps a little bit. We needed to condense the white down. And the only way to do that, from my point of view, was to have the blue on the edges. And the 2 blue outer bands are exactly the same size as the central white band. And that means that for any kind of like profile pictures or designs or whatever else, the white square is a perfect square. So you can do a circle or a square around it, and it's great for, as I say, for social media profile pictures or whatever else, and for merchandise, for badges, for that sort of thing. And again, I spent a lot of time coming up with the design of the flag to make sure that it was going to be right, and I wouldn't have to change it later on after I'd considered something else. And you know, to this day, the flag has never changed in the more than 7 years that we've been going. So again, when it comes to name and flag, those are 2 things that you really want to have down as much as you can, because you don't want to chop and change them if you can avoid it. So, and I have mentioned this in previous videos in the How to Start a Nation and How to Start a Micronation series that I've made in the past. Throughout, I've always made it clear, consistency is key with this. So yes, that's why we have the 2 outer blue bands. It was to condense the white. Otherwise, this entire flag, aside from the blue star, would just be pure white, and that was just, it was too much white. Right. Republic of Sarah says, "Why should I waste 20 minutes thinking about the most professional way to write a YouTube chat?" Not sure I asked you to, unless that's in relation to something else that someone else said. Austin says, "Oh, okay, you're having a conversation. Okay, more like 29 seconds doesn't give that much effort. Maybe improve your English. Okay, fine. Yep, having a conversation. That's fine." Trans, whatever the name is, says, "Yeah, I might change my Micronation name to Lemonland to what? To Lemonland to Rep Mountain that border." I don't know. I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm afraid you'll have to be a bit more specific with that. Just having a conversation. Thoughts on capitalism? By and large, in favour of free market enterprises, free market capitalism. You know, I fully believe that people should be entitled to the fruits of their own labour. I am staunchly against collectivist ideologies and collectivist philosophies where the individual does not matter, that the individual is simply a cog in an overall machine. I much prefer a system where people are able to engage in free exchange, own private property, and benefit, as I say, from the fruits of their own labour with as minimal government interference with that as possible. So I'm very much a free market capitalist in that sense. That said, I do believe, certainly for entities like us, that some kind of state involvement within the free market is ultimately necessary. And a good example of that would be the rhubarb at Southwood, because ultimately I am the Emperor of Stomaria, but I am also the most active producer of goods within Stomaria. So in some sense, I am a state capitalist, and state capitalism is very much the kind of driving ideology of Stomaria, I think it's fair to say, because it does combine the best of both worlds when it comes to a free market society and a not so free market society, in the sense that I can advance the interests of Stomaria by playing an active part in the free market. And that's what I intend to do. And I am the government of Stomaria, ultimately. I am not separate from that. So, you know, there is a bit of that in there. But by and large, free market capitalism and the government playing a part within that free market capitalist system is the best system from our own perspective. The Raven says, if I start a micronation, I will use brass and copper coins, brass from recycled bullet casings, and copper recycled various applications. Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, that's a good way to do it. It's a good thing to have a kind of like, I'm trying to think of the right word now. Being able to source the brass and the copper yourself is definitely something I would encourage, because buying it, like pure copper or pure brass and then making coins, that's utterly uneconomical. Buying silver and gold at a premium and using that at the value of the spot price is already quite uneconomical, in the sense that it does cost us every time we do that. But the magnitude of difference between that and purchasing copper and brass, the premiums on those are just extortionately high, and it will be completely not worth your while in pursuing if it is going to be the case of you're going to buy this in and then use it, because you're probably going to pay 10 times its value to actually utilize. So if you can do it yourself through utilization of scrap or something, not only will that make it more economical for you to use, but it's also something to talk about. So that's something I would definitely encourage. Sorry, it's going to take another sip of the old honey water here. Lovely. Right, where are we? Flandrensis says, updates on scandal regarding claiming of Empress jewellery. What? I don't know what that's in reference to, I'm afraid. A scandal regarding the Empress's jewellery? I'm unaware of the scandal, so you'll have to fill me in on that one. Right, where are we? So we are all caught up, which is good, a rarity, but good. Have I had this on? No, hang on. Can't tell if I've got this on newest first or top posts. Normally it says. Okay. Well, it is what it is on that front. Right, Unluck Jackie says, I'm wondering what is your heir to the throne? Well, that's a very simple one. That is my daughter, Princess Eleanor of Stomaria. She will eventually inherit everything that I am building for her. She was the first ever Stomarian-born citizen and the first ever citizen of Stomaria outside of myself and Emperor Samantha. Because Stomaria was founded in June 2019, and for a full year, we didn't allow anyone else to join Stomaria while we fleshed out exactly how we were going to go about this. Excuse me. As I say, it was just me and Samantha for the first 12 months of Stomaria's existence. And 5 days before our 1-year anniversary, Princess Eleanor was born. And so she became the first ever Stomarian-born citizen and the first ever citizen outside of myself and Samantha. And 5 days later, we open up citizenship to everyone else, and yeah, the rest is history. But yeah, long and short of it is Princess Eleanor will be taken over as and when. And yeah, that will be the day that I pass on. But, so, while I've caught up with the actual comments, and I have alluded to this earlier in the video itself, now, the purpose of this particular video is to highlight our imperial ambitions. Because ultimately, what we are building is an empire. And I get no end of comments on, like, quite peculiar comments on the face of it, saying we are imperialist. As if that's something that we're already, first of all, not aware of, and as if that's a bad thing. So, you know, we'll get someone saying, I'll never support imperialism or whatever else. But imperialism, in the context of what we're building, is about, as I've said earlier in this video, voluntary association, voluntary affiliation, the legal acquisition of territory through free exchange, and all the rest. There's nothing coercive, there's nothing violent, there's nothing hostile about what we are trying to do. We are trying to do things by the book, and we're trying to do so by encouraging people to contribute their time, their energy, their resources on a voluntary basis. Nobody is forced to be a part of Stomaria, nobody is forced to be a part of the Empire. We are all here because we want to see this project succeed. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. Because when I started this, it was literally just me and Samantha. It was a flag in the corner of our living room, and it was 14 followers on a Facebook page. That's all it was. It was nothing. We were one of many hundreds or thousands of entities that had been formed that week. And there was nothing in Stomaria, there was nothing about Stomaria that would have made it any more distinct from any other entity out there on the face of it. But what Stomaria had, and what a lot of entities did not have, was me. And I was absolutely determined to make what we had built, or what we were building, into something that was going to not only last, but have a noticeable impact on those that are involved. And to make sure that those that were involved were able to benefit from the establishment of Stomaria and through the establishment of this empire long into the future. And so what I have worked quite tirelessly to build over the last 7 years, more than 7 years, is a community, is a society, is a nation, is an empire that is going to stand the test of time and that is going to benefit those involved. And again, I can't stress it enough, we are about territorial expansion, we are about imperial ambition. We want to grow, we want to expand beyond our borders, we want to do more than what, and we want to gain more than what we already have. It started off when we acquired Southwood in 2022, it carried on when we acquired Porto Lagoa in 2025, and when we acquired Augusta in 2026. But that is not where I want to stop, that is not where I intend to stop. I want things to grow faster, I want things to progress further. And in order to do that, as I made clear in previous video, we need to start thinking about this more seriously. We need to do more in order to accomplish what we have set out to do. And the only way I can realistically achieve that is by pulling out all the stops, by making as much of a sacrifice as I can in order to make this happen, and encouraging others to contribute what they can towards this effort is a major part of this push. The New Esperance community, the Wayward community, the Stomarian community, these are all communities which in their own way are going to be working towards the expansion of this empire. I want to make sure that as many people as possible within these communities have the opportunity to play a part in this expansion, and I want to make sure that the leading figures within these communities are as fully aware as they can be that this is going to be the next major milestone of our journey. Because I don't want the empire, I don't want Stomaria to be stagnant, I don't want us to be idle, I don't want us to start to fall by the wayside, because make no mistake, we don't want, and I don't want, to rest on our laurels. A lot of people would have accomplished what we've accomplished and simply left it at that. But I'm always looking over the next horizon. I will always look over to see what the next step is, what the next goal is, and making sure that as much as possible is done in the time that I have is very important to me, because I want to make sure that what I leave Stomaria well, more specifically, what I leave Princess Eleanor and the next generation of Sumerians, is going to be something more than what I started with. I want to make sure that the groundworks for building this nation and building this empire are firmly laid. I want to make sure that everything that I have built, everything that I have done, is something that others can stand on the top of my shoulders, look at, and build something better, build something stronger. And in doing so, hopefully, change their own corner of the world. And in the fullness of time, that is ultimately what I want to see. I want to see more of the drive, the ambition that I have. I want to see more of that within our own communities. And I think we are well on the way to doing that. I think more people are starting to resonate with what we are trying to build. Our followings are growing day by day. I think we recently hit something like 5,800 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is a fantastic milestone. Not nearly enough in the great scheme of things, but it is a milestone. And sooner or later, that 5,800 subscriber count will be 6,000, 7,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, whatever else. We will keep growing. We will keep pushing. We will not stop. And much like on our social media platforms, the drive to expand, to grow, and to really build something, I want to do that in every aspect of Sumeria. I want more Sumerian citizens. I want the single digits, the double digits, the triple digits, the quadruple digits. I want tens, hundreds, thousands of Sumerians. I want to make sure that we want to have the people in place to take full advantage of the lands that we acquire. I want people to be able to be in a position where they can go to Sumerian lands, not just in the United Kingdom, but across the world, because we are a global empire at the end of the day. And being able to have Sumerian citizens in the tens, the hundreds, and the thousands go to lands which consist of, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of square meters of Sumerian lands across the world, that is something that I want to see. I want them to take full advantage of that. When it comes to the utilization of the status, I want to see this utilized by more and more Sumerian citizens. I want more and more people to be able to benefit in some way from the trade, the commerce, and the enterprise that we are encouraging. And utilizing the stata in this way is going to be a major means in which people can not only get a hold of silver, not only encouraged to actually produce, establish their own businesses, their own industries, encourage them to think about outside the box in terms of how to generate additional capital for themselves. But it is also a way to educate people about the importance of sound money, of commodity money, and how that differs from fiat currency. Because ultimately, as many people know, there is a difference. And when it comes to the citizens, the land, the status, the industries, this is all something that I want to see come into fruition in a major way. I want to see Stomaria stand on its own 2 feet in the fullness of time. I want it to be a nation which has people, which has industries, which has housing, which has an identity, which has its own culture and values, which cooperates with those around us, but is ultimately a distinct entity in its own right, if not legally, then culturally, then physically. We want to be able to identify Sumerian lands. We want to be able to identify genuine Sumerians out there in the real world. It's not a case of just being an online entity. That's not something that Sumeria was ever intended to be. We are a nation building project that happens to be on social media. We are not on social media to build a nation building project. In the same way that some other entities might be, like Ironland, for instance. Ironland, was created by and large as a way to, encourage more viewership of a particular YouTube channel, as opposed to actually looking to build a nation in the modern world. And we're, the polar opposite of that. And if it wasn't for social media, we would still exist. We would still be out there. We'd still be doing all of this. Whereas you can't say the same for a lot of other entities out there, which exist, purely on Discord or purely on Reddit or purely on Facebook or purely on YouTube. We're out there. We're doing it in the real world. We are building something genuine and generational. And making sure that we have everything in place to make sure that it continues is incredibly important to me. And to be able to facilitate, to promote this, I really need for more Sumerian supporters to play an active role in turning this vision into reality. I want more people involved. I need to see more people involved. Not because Stomaria would fold if that was not the case, but because the journey will be far more simplistic. It will be far easier. It'll be far more achievable and attainable, and you'll be able to see it a lot more clearly if you had the people behind you, if you had the backers behind you. And though we do have people involved, and we have had people involved since the earliest days, and there are people who have been incredibly generous towards their contributions towards Stomaria. They're incredibly generous in terms of everything that they've done for Stomaria in times past, and as things stand today. There is just so much more we can do, and I know the pool of people out there that are aware of Stomaria, that support Stomaria, that are interested in Stomaria. That pool of people is far larger than the people that actually play an active role in the development and expansion of Stomaria. And that, again, is something I want to change. I want more people to get involved. So hopefully in the fullness of time, that will happen. But that is going to be a part of the drive for the next few weeks, the next few months, and indeed the next few years. We want to change supporters into citizens. We want to turn citizens into active participants in the development of Stomaria, either as members of the Imperial Guard or provincial governors, members of the Imperial Court, Lords and Ladies of Stomaria, whatever else. We want them to play an active role in developing Stomaria. And to do that, the first thing to do is to turn supporters into citizens. And that's one of the first things that I'm going to be prioritizing over the coming months, as well as having our social media about where we can promote Stomaria. I can do more live streams, I can do more long form videos, I can generate revenue for Stomaria through ad revenue or super chats and gifts and things like that. But ultimately, the best way for supporters to support Stomaria is simply by becoming Stomarian citizens. And that's something I want to encourage more of, and will be doing so over the preceding months and years ahead. So again, just 1 minute, so refreshing myself. Ugh. Right. Republic of Sarah says, got to get going. Thank you for dropping by. Austin says, what are your next steps in marketing Stomaria? So, I mean, I kind of alluded to this a little bit, but in terms of marketing, it's not really something that we do in the sense that we have like a marketing department or anything like that, but we do tend to pivot our focus onto various aspects of the social media campaigns in particular in order to generate interest in Stomaria. Because I would say with some confidence that over 90% of the people involved in Stomaria in a direct capacity, and over 99% of the people that are aware of Stomaria, is through social media. Without it, Stomaria would not be nearly as far along as it is. So when it comes to what we intend to do in order to push this forward further, I do want to see more social media posts covering more of a range of topics. I do want to start looking at the previous green initiative campaigns that we launched a few years ago, and still participate in now, but don't encourage it as much. More long form videos, more live streams, more variation in terms of the content that we put out there, in terms of the things that we kind of discuss, which can be quite challenging with a nation building project, because there's only so much you can deviate before you get into the realm of territory of like political commentary, or as has been clear in this video, like movie or game reviews or whatever else. It's a tricky line to walk, because on the one hand you want to encourage maximum participation from people, and sometimes that can mean discussing things that aren't necessarily related to nation building or to Stomaria itself. And I have fought this battle over the years between how I navigate this, how I keep this as a Stomarian channel, how I keep this as a nation building channel, but also come up with topics that will entice people to get engaged with us without losing that focus. So it is quite challenging from my own perspective, because if I was any other channel, if I was like a political commentator, or I was doing movie reviews or game reviews or whatever else, I feel like we would be a lot further along in terms of like subscriber counts and stuff. Because when it comes to like public speaking, or at least speaking to a phone, I don't obviously have any issue with that, evidently, but it's because the topic of conversation that I'm covering is so incredibly niche. It makes it very hard to grow and expand. I mean, micronationalism is already incredibly niche, but what we're doing isn't even micronationalism. That's not really our target audience, ironically enough. We are talking about genuine nation building. And so if you think micronationalism is niche, it's even nicher. It narrows it down even further, because then you're talking about not just micronations, but you're talking about people who are genuinely looking to build actual nations in the modern world. And these are people with obviously, I say obviously, but often with very limited capacity, time, resources, energy, space to actually develop these themselves. Some of them are further along than Stomaria, some of them are further behind Stomaria, some of them are about on the same par as Stomaria. But the bottom line is that the target audience is very, very small, and trying to identify and find those people, it can be a challenge. And trying to retain their interest in what we're building and in what they're building is a major challenge for us, but is one I'm quite keen to try to overcome. The Raven says, opinion on the right to bear arms. Well, this is a bit of an interesting topic of conversation, because the libertarian in me would suggest, you know, your right to private property, your right to protect yourself, your right to firearms and all the rest of it. I have been brought up in a culture, that being the British culture, where gun ownership is far more, trying to think the right word. Frowned on is probably not the right word, but it's not something that's really brought up as a topic of conversation in our neck of the woods, because it's just not something that happens. You know, when we think of gun ownership, it's normally two categories. It's normally farmers in the countryside and gangs in the streets. But even gangs, you know, rely more heavily on things like, you know, I don't know how much I can say on YouTube, but not firearm related necessarily, but normally other weapons, shall we say, which is why certain like knife crime and things like that is a lot more prevalent in the UK, I suspect, than it is elsewhere in the world. But when it comes to Stomaria itself, I mean, we have air rifles, which are legal to own, so you do have that. We also have the Stomarian sabers, so we do have those. So when it comes to protecting myself, my property, my family, this is not something I'm shy of personally. I have made it clear in the past that if anyone was to ever, you know, break into my home in the middle of the night with my family there, you know, I have various tools at my disposal close to where I sleep. And if I ever feel that my family is being threatened, then the people that are doing the threatening will be very fortunate to leave the property in anything other than a body bag. And the consequences of that may be that I am punished, that I'm penalised. But in my opinion, when it comes to being a husband, when it comes to being a father, when it comes to being a man, protecting those around you, protecting those that you love, is first and foremost your most sacred duty. And if there are consequences to protecting your family, that is going to reflect poorly on you, that's just something that you're going to have to deal with. Certainly that's my point of view anyway. You know, I'm not going out there, you know, picking fights. I'm not going out there, you know, looking to harm people that have just wandered onto my land or whatever else. But if, you know, anyone was to come to threaten me or my family, then, you know, actions will be taken and consequences will be had, which is all I dare to say about that. But going back to the question on the right to bear arms, I suppose I'm in two minds about it. I understand the argument for it, but I also understand the argument against it. And I think if you were to roll out the right to bear arms in the United Kingdom, as an example, and every household or a lot of households were flooded with firearms, would that be better or worse for society at large? And I think that's probably the question that you have to ask yourself. Because if you took the example of the United States, you know, you'd have to look at the stats, but I would imagine that the crime rate and the amount of fatalities in the United States pro rata is a lot higher than it is in the United Kingdom. So yeah, I am in two minds about it. I'm not gonna lie, because as I said, I've been brought up in a culture where that's not really a thing. That's not it's not really even something that's like on the agenda. It's not something that we talk about. Like in general political discourse, it's the right to bear arms doesn't really factor into the equation because it's just not a part of our culture as things stand today. But it's an interesting thought. Right. Where did we get to? Austin says, short form videos are popular nowadays. Have you ever thought about promoting stereo in that format in different platforms? I have. We did attempt to do like TikTok, and I have experimented with shorts on YouTube. The problem is I just don't like doing them. By and large, I have done a few, and they have picked up a little bit of traction. And I understand that there are some micronations that yield like thousands, tens of thousands of views, and have generated massive followings through shorts on YouTube. But it's not really my style because I prefer long form videos where I have the opportunity to talk about things and discuss things. I like doing the live streams. I like having these conversations with people and sort of sharpening my own oratory while also getting to know the people that are following us and allowing them the opportunity to offer their 2 cents and participate in some way. But shorts, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of brain rot. I feel like I would be contributing to an algorithm that's just going to push more and more of these short snippet content. And with Stomaria in particular, it is something that I need, or I feel that I need time to talk about. I need the opportunity to sort of lay out everything that I'm trying to say. Because we're such a niche talking point, we're such a niche genre, we're a niche topic. It does take a bit of time for people to fully appreciate what it is we're trying to do, and I don't think I can normally get around with that in shorts, and trying to condense everything into 60, 90, 180 second clips. I do find to be challenging. I'm not against making more shorts necessarily, but even the shorts that we do make, they don't gain the kind of traction that you might expect for a channel of our size. Maybe a 1,000-2,000 views rather than the tens of thousands that you might expect some channels to get. So not really sure what's going on there either, but it's something to consider. The Raven says, would you consider yourself conservative or progressive or something else? I generally describe myself as libertarian and socially conservative. I think it's probably the combination of ideologies that kind of fits my my philosophy, my belief system. I generally don't like pigeonholing myself too much because there are elements of my worldview which could be considered of the left. Personally, I don't really consider that to be the case, but there are some that would consider it as such. A good example of that would be environmental conversation, green energy and that sort of thing. I'm very big on green energy and renewable energy. I'm a strong proponent of weaning ourselves off fossil fuels and protecting the natural environment and the impact that humanity has on the world around us and the climate around us. I think there are some that would argue that we don't have any impact or very negligible impact on climate change or the world around us or whatever else. I think it is more of an issue, but I think the problem from my perspective is that when it comes to like the left's version of this, it's a case of they're determined to make sure that all Western industry, like in the United States or the United Kingdom, for example, adheres to the absolute strictest conditions, which pushes up the prices of electricity, of energy usage. And we only make up a tiny fraction, the tiniest percentage of like global emissions, as an example, whereas China is just pumping out vast quantity, or India, or other parts of the world, which make up far larger percentages of carbon emissions, as an example. But we can't change their habits, but yet we're expected to decimate British industry or American industry or whatever else in order to fulfill carbon emissions quotas, while the likes of India and China and other nations around the world, pay very little heed to that sort of thing, and are quite happy to destroy local or international environments in order to protect and boost their own industries, for better or worse. And I mean, you can argue to the cows come home that that's not something that should be, but that is just the way the world is. And so you have to find this balance between trying to establish and maintain and protect your industries, national industries, while also trying to adhere to the philosophy of trying to encourage more green energy usage and reducing carbon emissions so you can, I suppose, without it being detrimental to everything else around you. Because I promise you, if the option in front of someone is you can shut down your business and we will reduce your carbon emissions by 0.000000000000001% of the global carbon emissions, or we can keep your business and that carbon emission is just going to remain a factor. It is what it is. People are going to make the choices that they're going to make. But yeah, long story short, I would consider myself libertarian, socially conservative, but I am not wedded entirely to one ideology or another. It's just broadly speaking, that's where I sit. I think you might have made a new niche, which is genuine nation building. Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, when it comes to what this venture is about, this is what this channel is about, what this endeavor is about, is a lot more niche than even micronationalism. Micronationalism is not niche at all when compared to what you might define as genuine nation building, and so that's something I'm obviously very conscious of, because we don't limit our audience as such, because micronations do naturally just drift towards us and our content, because what we cover does make a lot of mention, and there is a lot of value to be had from the perspective of the micronations in watching our content. But because we're not strictly micronational in nature, we're not posting in micronational groups or subreddits or forums or anything like that. We're not actively trying to get more micronations involved in what we're doing here. We're interested in working with genuine nation building projects, and obviously that does mean that this level of kind of gatekeeping, which I do think is necessary in order to make sure that we get the best of the best and not just any old sludge or any old slop coming our way. It does obviously limit our audience to some extent, but even so, we have built up a comparatively massive following all the same. As I say, just under 6,000 people on our YouTube channel alone. Not to mention the other followings that we have elsewhere on X and Reddit and Discord and Facebook and whatever else. So we're doing all right. But yeah, as I said, it is very, very niche. The Raven says, I'm very pro Second Amendment. I'm sure you know by now I live in the USA. Yeah, I mean, if you're in the USA and you have more conservative or libertarian leanings, I think it's just a given. It's just when you think libertarian or socially conservative in the UK, it doesn't necessarily mean, and quite frankly very rarely means, the right to bear arms as a topic of conversation. Because as I say, it's not really in the British culture. It's not in our it's not on our DNA as such, in as much as it is in the States or elsewhere in the world. And I think there would be a reluctance even from those that are advocates of personal freedom and liberty and free market capitalism and all the rest of it. I think even in those circles there would be, if not pushback, then some reluctance, I think, to go down that route. But I think having the capacity to defend yourself and your family, I think, as a kind of guiding principle, as a philosophy, as a starting point, I think is a good place to be. I think the idea of protecting yourself, protecting your family, what do you need, and what's the best way to do that? Is it by making guns available to everyone, or is it by limiting the amount of guns to everyone so that, I guess you have a fighting chance? Anyway, all by the by. I appreciate the question and the conversation. But for me, there's not really a straight, simple answer, for the reasons I outlined. Austin says, in my opinion, right to bear arms is a double-edged sword. High risk, high reward. Look at the state of the US. It always has maintained the highest number of mass shootings in history. But also there is protection, which is very important. And that's exactly my point. I mean, you could go either way with it. You would have to contend with the fact that if you were pro right to bear arms in the UK and say a law was passed and the guns were made available in the UK, you would just have to accept that the number of shootings and mass shootings would be exponentially higher than they are in the UK. I mean, we have like a knife crime problem where people get stabbed. A lot of times people get killed, and that's obviously tragic. But I think compared to other parts of the world, like the US, we don't have nearly the same amount of fear around that. It's not to say that mass shootings don't happen, or bombings, or other attacks of various natures can't happen. Again, I don't know what I can say on YouTube, but I think opening the doors to gun ownership, it would just inevitably lead to more people dying or being killed, as the case may be. Austin says, brain rot, I like that. I like that, King. You're starting to catch up with the language. Yeah, I picked up a little bit of lingo. Yeah, just a little bit over the years, but ball knowledge is not what I was familiar with, but I am now. So there we go. Every day is a school day, as they say. The Raven, I don't think that gun control works, no matter what. Criminals will get guns either way and will find a way to commit violent crime either way, so my opinion is going off from more benefit than risk. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the fundamental argument that people do make, but again, we don't have the same amount of gun crime in the UK as we do, as you guys do in the USA. And that's not to say that criminals can't get a hold of guns, and that's not to say gun crime doesn't happen, because it obviously absolutely does. But my argument, I suppose, going in the other direction, is that if you were to legalise the right to bear arms in the UK, it is inevitable, it's unquestionable that more people would die because of gun violence. I think that's just an inevitable consequence of that. So the question then becomes, okay, would that be a trade-off worth making? We would make society, in one sense, more safe, but in another sense, a lot more unsafe, and that's the catch-22 sort of question, really. That's what you've got to consider. I suppose, I think I can't remember who said it, but I suppose it's something, a common talking point, I guess. But I suppose it's a bit like driving cars. It's like we could prevent, however many hundreds or even thousands of people each year from getting injured or killed through cars simply by banning cars, but then you're going to have no cars, so it will make everything hugely inefficient. So having cars, that comes with the acceptance that a certain number of people are going to get hurt and a certain number are going to get killed each and every year because of car accidents or car-related violence. But there's no one, I think, seriously saying let's ban cars to save lives. So in that sense, sort of flipping back on the other direction, you could say that something similar towards the right to bear arms. And again, it's an interesting talking point and it's an interesting conversation. But I struggle to come down hard on one side or the other because I'm not an American, and as I said, but because in America you already have so many guns. It's like, was it 3 guns per person on average or something like that? So the idea that you're going to say, okay, no more guns, that's never going to work. But in the UK, I don't think, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would strongly suspect that the gun-to-person ratio is a lot less. So it's far easier to say, let's just keep it as it is, rather than trying to backtrack. Because once you open the floodgates, there's really no going back. Not without additional violence and pushback. And so, yeah, again, it's because different countries, different cultures, different mindsets. But in principle, I understand what you're saying, and I don't begrudge people that advocate for gun rights. I fully respect that right, where you have it. It's just whether or not you introduce that right into places where you don't already have that right. that's just more of an interesting topic of conversation for me. Right, let's have a look. Austin says, yes, I agree, I like the long-form content. Please hear it. Blue the Odros, Europe colony. Not sure what that means, but welcome to the chat. The Raven says, I agree that we should take better care of the environment, but I do not agree with forcing people to buy electric cars and stuff like that. I personally think that nuclear is the best and the cleanest. Yeah, I mean, there was a time back when I was much younger where I was kind of dead set against nuclear because of the issues concerning what you do with nuclear waste in terms of the potential hazards involved with nuclear reactors if they fail, and there have been instances of that in history, of course. Not so distant history as well. So I was always a bit apprehensive about it, but to be honest, if the alternative is a complete collapse of society or skyrocketing energy costs and the destruction of industry and people's livelihoods and all the rest of it, I mean, maybe a few power stations, which are up to the most modern standards, meet all the necessary safety protocols and precautions, it's worth considering. But from our perspective, and this is I suppose the relevant point, we're not going to use nuclear power, obviously. That is to say, we're not going to build a nuclear power plant. But this is one of the reasons that we believe in a renewable energy, and we believe that a combination of biomass and wind and solar can create enough baseload energy for ourselves because of the nature of what we're building. It's very small in scale by and large, and even as we grow, even if we had hundreds or thousands of people involved, some solar panels and a wind turbine could generate a hell of a lot of energy for a community that size. So from our perspective, on an individual basis, on a family unit basis, and on a national basis, certainly in the context of what we're building, biomass energy, renewable energy, and biomass energy, solar, wind, that sort of thing, that is going to be a lot more advantageous to us, and it's something that we can control and have a genuine energy industry without relying on energy from the grid. So that's the route that we go down. That's why renewable energy is a big part of what we're trying to do. Blue the Orders, you can go on nation states. I assume you're talking about the game. I'm aware of it, but never played it. Austin says, you always impress, Emperor. Thank you. The Raven says, the more people would die from gun violence, but less from knife violence, so would be their change. Probably a small change, but nothing major in my opinion. I don't have the stats on it. I mean, it's illegal to carry knives, even if things stand. So if people were legally entitled to carry guns, I think it would be undeniable that it would be vastly higher. It would be interesting to see any kind of studies on what that might look like. But as I say, carrying a knife in public is already illegal. Carrying a gun in public is, it's clearly illegal. But if you were to legalize guns and legalize the carrying of guns in the public space, I think it is undeniable that more people would die. And again, I understand the arguments for it, and I'm not coming down on one side of the argument or another. It's just because, as I've made clear a few times now, the culture within Britain is a lot more different from the United States. We don't have a gun culture. We're not, it's never a policy point in mainstream political parties, or even as far as I know, minor political parties. No one's calling for the right to bear arms because it's not in our DNA. It's not in our culture. It's not in our mindset. We don't spend time thinking about it really. It just is what it is. But because you already have the right to bear arms, it's a lot more difficult to retract that or to restrict that. Whereas if we maintain the status quo, nothing changes. If we introduce the right to bear arms and it goes catastrophically wrong and people are dying en masse in a very short space of time, it's very hard to put the genie back in the bottle. It's very hard to put the lid back on Pandora's box. much like in the States. Like, no one can say, you know, the right to bear arms, we're going to rescind the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms no longer exists. We've got 3 guns per American in the States, from what I remember. It's just never going to happen. It's just the culture you have, you know, for better or worse. But the principle of being able to protect yourself and your family, and the right to do that, I'm fully on board with that. And I think, like in the UK, for instance, there are instances where people who have protected themselves and defended themselves, defended their family, defended their property, have been penalised, have been dragged through the courts, fined and jailed, and you know, punished in one way or another. And I think that's just horrendously wrong. Where we live in a country, a society where the criminal is made out to be the victim, and this is you know, it's not new, and I don't think many people watching this would you know, argue otherwise. There are many instances of this happening, and so that is something I'm more concerned about, rather than the right to bear arms. It's just the right to defend yourself. I think that is what's crucial, and that's something that we are seeing gradually eroded in the UK. As I made the case earlier in this video, if someone broke into my home, I would do everything in my power to destroy anyone that would threaten my family. And, you know, as I said earlier, if they left my property in anything other than a body bag, they should count themselves lucky. But in doing so, I know full well that the law would come down on me, that I would be the one that would be punished. I would be the one that would be dragged through the courts, you know, sent to jail, fined, imprisoned for life, whatever the case may be. I don't know. But as I made it again clear earlier in the video, the duty, the responsibility of a husband, of a father, and of a man is to protect those around them, to protect those that love, especially their immediate family and extended family. But simply the act of defending yourself and your property and your family in the United Kingdom can get you into a lot of trouble, and that is a problem. Austin says, well, cars are not made for the purpose to kill people. That's very true, and guns are used for the purpose of doing that. I suppose you could say, you know, hunting or whatever else as well. But they are designed to protect you, which is the argument I suspect they would make. What is that thing? Guns don't kill people, people kill people. I think that's the kind of talking point there. But what I'm saying is that with anything that you decide, there are consequences to it. If you want to minimize roadside fatalities to near zero, you ban cars. If you want to have gun violence and gun deaths at near zero, you keep guns off the streets and out of people's hands. And so you've just got to weigh up the odds as to what's worth doing on that front. Right. Where are we? The Raven says, oh, sorry, skipped a few. The Raven says, talking to Austin, guns are also used for hunting and just shooting for fun. Yeah, that's what I just said, yeah. So I think we are on similar mindsets. I know you do come on the side of staunchly Second Amendment, but because, as I say, I'm, you know, of a British culture and of a British mindset, it's not something that we're, you know, overly fixated on. It's just not a part of our everyday life, so it's not something that we need to worry about. But protecting ourselves and doing so without legal ramifications, that, however, is something that is an issue in the UK, and that is something that needs to be tackled. Republic of Galvonia has joined us. Hello, hello, hello. So Republic of Galvonia, for those that don't know, are a formal ally of Stomaria. In fact, I had a video call with King Jordan of Galvonia, as well as King Austin of Nyx, King Daniel the Wayward, and King Charlie of New Esperance in a video call probably a week or two ago, and that was good fun. So welcome, King Jordan. And this is to the Raven. There is quite a rabbit hole in regards to the climate change and all the control that will force in the name of saving the Earth. There's a lot going on there. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. There's, you know, you want to protect the local environment, you want to protect local habitats, you want to, you know, no one wants to see plastic in the ocean. No one wants to see diesel spills. No one wants to see their rivers filled with sewer waste. But at the same time, you can't focus on trying to reduce emissions by 0.0001%, and in doing so destroying every industry within your nation. So there's that. You've got to weigh up the odds. You've got to look at things practically. You've got to think logically. And this is the problem when it comes to like ideology and ideologues, and when it comes to like political parties and party politics and all that jazz, is that they're so dead set on their way, and their way has to be the way, and they're so, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it, determined, hardcore, absolutist when it comes to their goals, that they cannot accept or see any other alternative. That is where the problems start, because you can't see the other side. You're not listening to what's happening. You're not absorbing the information in front of you. You're not acknowledging reality, and that is a problem. And that's what is a lot of the problem in the world today, is that a lot of people just refuse to acknowledge that their way is not guaranteed to be the best way forward, especially on a national or international level. And so they have to be open to the idea to, go some of the way, but not all of the way. But having that mindset doesn't win you many friends in those sorts of circles. Right, the Raven says, on a very small scale and budget, solar and wind is the best option in my opinion. Absolutely, when it comes to individuals and the family unit, solar, wind, biomass energy, it's the way forward. You're not going to have a nuclear power plant in your back garden, but you sure as hell can have a solar panel on your roof or a wind turbine in your back garden or whatever else. Republico Ganvinia says, we definitely have a duty to steward our Earth, however it needs to be done locally, and we should not regulate our authority to a global power. Well, that's the thing, is that you can't. So that's what I was saying. You might have missed the first bit of this when we were talking about this, but that's what I was saying, where you can, if I was in charge of the UK government, and I said, right, we're reducing our carbon emissions to 0, and in doing so, we're going to destroy vast swathes of British industry, but it'll be worth it because our carbon emissions will be 0 and we'll be doing our part. Do you think China or India or any of these other major economies or developing economies are going to give, a rat's ass about that? They're going to keep pumping out the CO2. They're going to keep pumping out the carbon emissions. They're going to do whatever they can to build new industries, improve the quality of life of their citizens or whatever else, with near 0 consideration for the environment. So if we are going to commit economic suicide, it better be for more than 0.001% of carbon emissions around the world. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's not to say that everyone around the world, I mean, how would you do it? How would you compel every nation on Earth to reduce their carbon emissions? It's like committing industrial suicide, unless everyone does it. And even if everyone does it, everything is still going to be more expensive. So you've really got to find this middle ground. You've got to protect the environment, as Galvonia says, on a local level, even a national level. But when you're talking about international cooperation on this, this is all has to be done by voluntary association and by voluntary choice. And a lot of the powers that be, which produce the vast majority of carbon emissions around the world, I think it's fair to say are not necessarily the friendliest nations to the West. And so, you've got to weigh that up. The Raven says, last point, if everyone had a gun and if everyone criminal knew everybody had a gun, they'd be much less inclined to attack, in my opinion. Well, you say that, but I can point to the United States as a prime example of why that's not the case. I mean, gun violence and gun crime is extraordinarily high compared to the United Kingdom or in other Western countries. So, I'm not to rag on you too much about it, but when you have more guns, it doesn't mean that criminals are less inclined to rob homes or attack you or whatever else. If anything, the easier access of guns from their own perspective makes the whole job a lot easier. Even though there are people with guns, mass shootings still happen, and people are still killed in the streets, even though it's legal to own guns and carry guns in a lot of cases in the public space, or like conceal and carry or whatever else. And a lot of times when there are shootings in America, the reaction isn't to whip out the gun and protect yourself, but normally just to film it. So it's and it is a sad truth that, like, in the States, you stop. It's not that you stop caring, but there are so many tragedies when it comes to mass shootings and gun violence. It's like you stop, you do stop paying attention as much, because it's just so common. It's like every other Tuesday there's just some new, you know, catastrophe when it comes to gun violence, and it's just whether or not we would want to tolerate that here in the UK, or elsewhere in the world where we don't have the right to bear arms as an enshrined part of our rights. But yeah, I mean, we can agree to disagree, but I don't fundamentally disagree in the sense that I'm dead set against the right to bear arms. I'm just saying that there are perfectly good arguments on both sides of the coin, and I'm not personally comfortable with siding with either one in its fullest, because I can see the benefits and the cons on both. Galvonia says, Austin says, does not mean the car couldn't be used as a weapon. Yep, true, but that's just going off point a little bit. That's fine. The Raven says, you should not be thrown in jail for defending yourself or your family. No, I very much agree, but that is a reality that a lot of people in the UK do face if they defend themselves the wrong way, or if they protect their family the wrong way. Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in. I personally, the Raven says, I personally think that climate change is not as big of a problem as some people make it out to be. Sorry, just jumped. However, it jumped again. However, it is a thing and should receive attention. Well, yeah. Well, when it comes to like climate emissions, global warming, and everything, I mean, the world is always changing and all the rest of it. We all know that. We can always look throughout history before the Industrial Revolution and over the last few hundred years, and we can see that the world has warmed and cooled and all the rest of it. We already know that. The question is, how much of an impact are we having to exacerbate and speed up that process, and what that would mean for the rest of the wider world. Now, obviously, that you have the doomsdayers, which say the end of civilization is coming, the end is nigh, and they normally push that deadline back every 5 or 10 years every time we hit that, and nothing happens. But with that said, it is undeniable, I think, from my perspective, that humanity does in some way have an impact on the global climate. I mean, I don't. And my point is that not that we don't have an impact, but how much of that impact can we realistically mitigate without causing immense hardship to the people that are around? Are we going to destroy jobs and industries and businesses and people's livelihoods in the UK to reduce carbon emissions by, 0.5 percentage point, whereas everyone else is going to be pumping out like mad? Like, this is the thing, if environmentalists genuinely cared about reducing carbon emissions, they should all get on a big, I don't know how you do it, a big boat or a series of boats, sailboats, so it's not producing carbon emissions, sail to China, and then start campaigning over there, because they're China and India and all the rest, they will be the biggest polluters in the world. We could reduce our carbon emissions to absolute zero, and it would not make a dent. But them, it would make a difference. If that is going to be what the game we're going to play, if that's we're going to say that carbon emissions has to be reduced to zero globally, go over there and campaign. But they won't, because it's easier just to shout at your neighbours for boiling the kettle while it's full of water, as opposed to only boiling what you need. That's what we're talking about here. Right. The Raven says, anyway, what's your advice on making a national anthem? Ooh. Well, my advice on making a national anthem is that, first of all, it's not immediately necessary, so don't feel the need to rush it. Second of all, I would say that your national anthem is going to be personal to you. So it's going to, from my perspective, I want an anthem that is dramatic, upbeat, positive, and trying to draw inspiration from various sources of that without entirely plagiarizing anything is a bit of a fine line to walk. But in doing so, you could hopefully create yourself a unique anthem. But I would say, if you're not a proficient proficient writer or a musician, you might want to, you could use AI to do it, and for whatever it's worth. I don't have an issue with people using AI to make music videos. If someone wants to make an AI music video, an anthem using AI, rather than paying someone £300 to sing one, you know, I don't begrudge them. But what I will say is that when you do make the anthem, try to make it distinct. Try to make it unique, and especially if you are doing it through AI, it has a tendency to, like, you know, obviously sound a bit samey after a while. So just try to make it unique and unique to you. And I think trying to highlight who you are, what your values are, maybe what you're aspiring to do in some respects, or the feelings or the attitudes that your citizens who would ultimately be singing it, what should they be feeling while they sing the anthem? What kind of emotions should be running through them while they reference your nation? Should it be pride and patriotism, or love, or you know, any of these other kind of positive emotions, if you like? Is it supposed to be something that resonates strength? Is it supposed to be something that resonates calmness, or you know, whatever else? You know, you've got various themes, various values, various ways in which you can actually create an anthem, and it'll be up to the individual to come up the one that they want. Much in the same way as the flag and the name and all the rest of it. Everyone will have their own preference. But yeah, try to take inspiration from things that matter to you and what you want your citizens to feel when they sing it. Message retracted. Unlike Jackie says, the UK police is becoming the IRS scum. Yeah. Sorry, just distracted by something. Right. Good. Right. I am going to pop off for just a second. I'll keep the live stream running in case anyone has any more questions or concerns, but I'm just going to take 5. Just need a quick drink. I'm out of liquids here. I can feel my throat going a bit coarse. So if there's any more questions or concerns or whatever else, feel free to ask in the chat. Otherwise, we might consider sort of wrapping things up. We've been going for, I don't know how long now. What is it? Don't know how to. Is that 2 hours? I guess that's supposed to be 2 hours. When did we start? It can't be 2 hours. Must be longer than that. 3 hours and 20 minutes. I mean, we're doing all right. But yeah, I think the chat's dried up a little bit, and we're not getting the kind of traction that I was hoping for. I was worried that if I started the live stream too early today, we wouldn't get a lot of regular or as many viewers. That was always a risk. And while I am grateful for the contributions that Nubia, was it Nubia or Nubia? I can't remember. Very appreciative of the contributions that they've made, and for all the conversations that we've had. We might wrap it up before too long. So if there's any more questions or concerns, do highlight it in the chat while it's Booyah. Nibuya, that's it. Nibuya. I will forget. Right. Yeah. Ask your questions, concerns, whatever else. If there's nothing else, we might call it. But just give me 5, and I'll be. I will return. I'm gonna go destroy the environment by boiling a kettle. Right. Oh, dear. What's occurring? Doesn't look like much. Let's have a look. Which is the old Prussian anthem? Opinion on German remilitarization. Is that supposed to be, I don't know, a reference to the 1930s, or are we talking about modern German militarization in response to, you know, Russian aggression? If it's the latter, I think I would rather have a German military on our doorstep rather than the Russian one, in the modern sense anyway. Historically speaking, neither have been great for the wider world, but I think modern Germany is a little bit different from the Germany of, you know, 100 years ago. So I think we can probably look past that. But from my understanding, it's actually Poland which is the real powerhouse in the military department these days, and it's not a surprise since Poland is, you know, next on the menu, one would imagine, when it comes to the goings on in that part of the world. So it was. Yeah, it's not a major surprise that Poland will be quite keen to build up their military complex as quickly as possible, especially since Poland and Russia have not exactly had the most friendly of relations. Galvania says to the Raven, you are correct about that. In the US, there are very different cultures and beliefs between rural and urban areas. Most of the violent crime in the cities is done with unlawful weapons, I'm guessing that's going to say. Right. Yeah, unlawfully acquired weapons. Whereas in the rural areas, are raised a healthy respect and understanding of guns. Yeah, well, there's obviously going to be that element to it. But I suppose the point stands is that, you know, where there's guns, there's going to be people that are going to use them, and they're going to use them for nefarious purposes, and not even for, you know, crime necessarily, but you know, the rates of you know, how do you say it on YouTube? Self-deleting. The rates of self-deleting on in the States is a lot higher, and a lot of that has down to the fact that it's a lot easier to, you know, grab the you-know-what and pull the you-know-what and then it's done, rather than the more elaborate ways that you might have to do it elsewhere in the world where those sorts of things aren't legal. Might give you time to, you know, consider what you're doing, or if there's an alternative to what you're doing, or whatever else. Whereas, you know, if in the heat of the moment you decide right there and then it's time, you know, it's done. And that's one of the dangers of guns as well. Not the only one, but and again, I don't have the stats, but I'm very, very confident that the self-deletion rates in the United States are, I would imagine, a lot higher than in the UK prorated, as an example. But if anyone has the stats on that, I would be interested. But that's just my my assumption based on my understanding of, you know, how things are. Right. Galvania says, sorry everybody, I was pretty far behind with the chat, very poor connection here. That's no problem, Galvania. Which is Jordan. It was good to have you here. And Austin says, absolutely disgraceful thing, Galvania, unforgivable. I very much agree, although he is joking, but very much agree. But yeah, I think that's it. We've sort of come to the end of the chat. So I've gone through at various points during this live what this video is about, what my ambitions are, what my hopes were. And yeah, I do think maybe I should start. I say should start. I normally start live streams now, and then it kind of picks up at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, GMT time, my time. The chat today, it's not dead as such, because you guys have been great, you've been very engaging, but it is just kind of the same people commenting, and this is the thing that irks me, is that we got like nearly 6,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel. 6,000. And almost every live stream you're looking at best 10 to 20 concurrent watchers, and exceptionally few of those will engage with comments and all the rest of it. But the time that happens most commonly is between the hours of about 10 to 12 GMT time, so in the evening, so 10 o'clock to midnight basically. And I do think, and I presume that is to do with the fact that a lot of our audience is US based, which means that a lot of people will be coming off, their jobs at school or whatever else, will be coming home, and then they'll, occasionally tune in. But yeah, I think by and large we're in a place where we've sort of run out of steam a little bit, and I do have other things I can get on with this evening, so I am inclined to leave it there, since we have been going for some time now. Where are we? 3.5 hours. I mean, that's a pretty good inning. So unless there's anything else, I will give everybody a couple of minutes. If they want to ask anything else, ask questions, because they will probably be the last ones of the evening, and I'll just leave it there. The Raven has already said, okay, bye then. Okay, thank you for joining us, Raven. Thank you for joining us. Austin says, happy to tune in again. It's my second time here. Thank you very much for joining us, Austin. It was very great to hear you here. I think you're our second best contributor. I don't know who the top one is then. The Raven is number 3. You're number 2. Who's number 1? Can I see if I can do top who's or something? Can't seem to see it. Interesting. Oh, weirdly enough, the Raven... That's weird. Oh, I guess because he dropped out and came back in, maybe? Because the Raven is the number 1 contributor and the second best contributor. It's interesting. And the 3rd. Weird. Don't know how this works. Anywho. Right. Okay then, I think based on all that, I think we'll leave it there. But thank you very much for everyone that tuned in. Thank you for the contributions that were made. It's very much appreciated. And we will continue to do live streams. We will continue to fundraise. We will continue to get everything ready, get our things lined up for the future acquisition of land. But I hope you all have a good evening, or morning, or afternoon, wherever you are, and we'll catch you in the next one.